Grounded in sinfully sunny Las Vegas, Nevada, Avantpop Bookstore presents Join us on this episode of Avantpop Bookstore Presents is Joe Reed. Joe has been a music producer. He's also been a cannabis business owner. He's also the co-owner of WLVS Den Kava here in Las Vegas. Join us now, Joe Reed.
Oh man, my shit goes all over the. Can I cuss on this?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. My shit goes all over the place, man. Like you know what's funny is that And I tend to ramble, like my wife says, so like you could stop me and cut me off. But
we'll guide you.
Man, I get like, man, when I look at myself at 45 and I look back at my life, because my wife, when I first met her, she said, "Man, you've lived a really interesting life." Because I honestly think when she met me, she thought that I was full shit. Because I just could tell she was like not entertained. She's like, okay.
Yeah.
And then she'd start meeting people. And then she'd be like, "Hey, Joe is fucking wild."
We
like
this is the same thing.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so it's like now I'm 45 and then I've calmed down. I'm sober and I'm real focused on work and family, really, man. But like, obviously art is a big thing. Like just like your place here. Like, I mean, I'd rather be like in a place like your place here than most places in Vegas because it's like it's the pure essence of what I like. You know what I mean? I like the unique, the subculture, like I like that, you know what I mean? But so then I've lived this interesting life because of it. I've done all kinds of stuff from, being baptized Mormon when I was a kid to being a participant in like the vampire ball, you know what I mean? So it's like all over the place, been in bands and you know what I mean? Yeah. And so like but I look at myself like from the outside though, I'm like, man, I am kind of interesting, but it's hard to talk about myself, and so it's
let's roll it back then. And yeah, you come from San Bernardino, an area that I was just north of growing up.
Really, where'd you grow up?
Ridgecrest.
Ridgecrest. Okay, cool. Yeah, I grew up in a Muscoy, San Bernardino. Okay. So some people from San Bernardino don't even know where Muscoy's at. Yeah, Muscoy's. Somebody years ago said that Muscoy is the armpit of San Bernardino, because. Muscoy's famous for a couple of things, but the main thing I think it's famous for is there was a huge train explosion in the early 90s there. Oh, there was a tanker that exploded not too far from the trailer park I lived in glamorous Muscoy, California, and it burned some houses down, it killed some people, and it burned a couple friends of mine that I still know. Like they still have like burn marks. Wow. And people know Muscoy because of that, because it was on the news for like a month straight. You know what I mean? What had happened there, and then really it's just known for meth.
That's the same with Ridgecrest. Yeah, military town, meth, and that was it. We had one amazing band come out of it, and one really popular band that came out of it. A band named Thin White Rope. Was a little older than me, but it was pre-grunge, but desert rock. The lead singer was from Ridgecrest. Beautiful writer, just amazing talent, grungy Tom Waits kind of voice, and then the guitar player Roger Kungrel. He was not from Ridgecrest, but just ghosty, deserty, like
nice. What music. Are they doing anything anymore?
Not anymore. No. Guy Kaiser is, I believe, a biology teacher now at Davis, where he graduated, where the band started.
That's crazy.
And I mean, they put out like 6-7 albums, including a live album.
What was the name of them again?
Thin White Rope.
I'm gonna look them up.
Named after William S. Burroughs' jism description of ejaculation, thin white rope.
I guess that makes sense. And now
the guys are gay. It's just that they love Burroughs, I guess.
Hey, you know what I mean? Who cares?
Like, and the other band was Blink-182. I grew up with Mark Hoppus.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Mark Hoppus. It's funny story is that like I have a bunch of friends that I've met Travis Barker a bunch of times, and then I have a really good friend that's still close to Travis, and it's funny because I've watched my wife watches the Kardashians. Of course, Travis is married to Khloe, and she's like pauses it and takes the picture when they have their baby shower. Pauses it and takes the picture of my buddy, which I would consider one of my best friends, in the scene there at the baby shower, and she was like, again, that's another one of those stories where I think she might have even thought like I was full of shit, and then she sees my friend on the Kardashians, and she's like, oh shit, like, you know what I mean? But you know, obviously, I'm sure we'll get to it. It's like I threw a lot of shows and I was promoter. I'm throwing a show tomorrow actually, but it's a smaller one at my place. But you know, it's Blink-182. I was never really a Blink fan.
Yeah, I wasn't either. I mean, I liked Mark. I've known him since junior high, and he was a good guy. You know, he came from upper middle class. His dad, I believe, was some high up billet base in the Naval Weapons Center. He was some high up guy.
Oh shit.
Yeah, Ridgecrest was not just military, but it was where they designed weapons, and so you get a lot of brilliant physicists and minds that come out there, and some of them stayed, some of them worked and had their kids there, and then others just bounced. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, Ridgecrest. Is that the town that has an abandoned, what were they called? Base housing?
Yeah.
There's an abandoned base housing.
NWC, the Naval Weapons Center, China Lake.
Yeah, so I've painted that a bunch of times.
Really?
Yeah,
nice.
because that's like a destination for when people come into town from, and they want to paint. Hilarious. And I'm just like, well, we can paint this abandoned base housing. And then, like, I mean, I've heard of Ridgecrest, but I didn't think that I'd ever been there. But then I put two and two together. Yeah, there's a military base. There's a hospital there. It's abandoned now, too, I think.
Probably, yeah. It's one of those old desert towns where someone comes in and develop, and they build a new mall across town, and then everyone vacates the old one, and then just stays empty for forever.
Shit. Urban development or whatever.
Yeah. It's so weird. Instead of fixing one area up, they just move on and keep building out in the desert. So it just builds.
And that's crazy for homeowners that think they're gonna put their stake down for the rest of their lives. It depreciates, property values. It screws everything up. You know what I mean? But that's the name of the game with greed.
Well, and exactly. And the whole town was based off of China Lake. So, it really was the military base, and then slowly people stayed in that high desert area, and Ridgecrest developed.
But
yeah, as soon as, 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I had worked my whole high school career to get the fuck out of town.
Yeah.
So, and I moved straight to the ocean. As a California kid, that's the one place you want to be.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah, exactly. I lived in Muscoy, and I actually never had, the first time I went to the beach in my life, I was almost out of high school already.
Wow.
Yeah, because we didn't have any reason to go to the beach. I mean, half the time my mom didn't drive. My stepdad always drove piece of shit cars, and then I didn't have really a lot of friends that their parents were very motivated to take us to the beach.
Yeah.
So I got old enough, and we drove, and then we went to the beach, and then, it's like I still remember that trip. But it's crazy because then, you talk to people now, and they're just like, oh, bro, as a kid, I loved coming to Newport. I'm just like, yeah. I didn't know none of this shit until I was an adult,
I always thought I wanted to be a surfer until I was 13. I finally made it out for my birthday. My mom took me out there with some friends, and I got in the ocean, and seaweed hit my leg, and I freaked the fuck out. I never wanted to surf ever after that. I was like, nope. Plus, I can barely stand up, much less balance on anything. That's why I never became a skateboarder. Too tall. It's a long ways away from my head to the ground.
That's pretty funny, man. Yeah, man. Odd thing about water, I almost drowned when I was a kid. My mom was a housekeeper, and I was we would kind of go to work with her, and we'd either spend some time at like a Denny's or wherever so my mom could work.
Yeah.
And one time we were at the pool, my brother and I, and then I got in the water, and I almost drowned. I didn't know how to swim, and so my brother had to jump in and save me, and it was terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
And so I've had 5. I just posted something on social media the other day because I have a beautiful pool at my house, and I said, this is the 5th pool I've owned, and I've been in all of the pools combined maybe 5 times. And so, but I love the water. I love looking at the pool. The pool is almost like it's a status symbol in my opinion. Everybody else enjoys my pool but me.
Yeah.
But I'll go in the jacuzzi or whatever, but once in a while. But just like the beach, I love being at the beach. I could potentially retire. I like Oceanside. Oceanside's cool. Venice is actually cool. You know what I mean? But like, I don't ever go in the ocean. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it's subconsciously. It's because I drowned.
San Luis Obispo for 13 years. Morro Bay, specifically in Los Osos, right on the ocean. I just drive out there and sit, smoke weed, and stare at the ocean.
Nice.
I did that for every day, mostly. Get off work, go straight there. Never got in the ocean. Never, went in the water, but walked the beach and just sat and looked at it forever.
Well, I believe humans need to be by water occasionally.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It's like a really good, therapeutic thing. You know what I mean? To watch water, listen to water. Like, you know what I mean? Like even my pool, I like listen to the motor at night and everything. And so yeah, fucking water.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we're like 80% water, so I think we're called to water, man. But yeah, no, there was actually Muscoy where I grew up. There was a place in Muscoy called Muscoy Beach, but it was a wash that like 3 times a year or whatever there would be water from Big Bear that come through it, and they call it Muscoy Wash. But I would you know, steal cars when I was younger, you know. And it's funny to say that as an adult openly on air, but steal cars, and then we would dump them in Muscoy Beach. So at any given time, because that was kind of the get down with everyone, is that you could go down there and find like a Hyundai or a S10 truck or something just like dumped down there. And, you know, it was crazy.
Now, growing up, did you do a lot of pallet fires? Like that was, when I first went to San Francisco and I moved up to the Bay Area, everyone was into Burning Man, and they're like, you gotta go. It's in the middle of the desert, and it's a big fire, and everyone hangs out and parties, and you dress up.
Did you go to Burning Man?
I went once.
Yeah.
You know, but I grew up in the desert, so I went to pallet fires.
I was gonna say,
I
like,
dressed up and did drugs. Around big huge fire all the time.
I mean, there's some there's a couple of guys I grew up with in Muscoy. There were the Coe brothers, COE brothers, the Frankie Coe and Tony Coe and Frankie Coe, and they had this huge backyard that's facing like train tracks, and it was like in any other area it would look like it was in like Detroit, you know, house, and then the big ass backyard, and then like the train tracks, and they would burn shit. But then things would break out depending on how much we were drinking. It would break out into like Fight Club in the backyard, and then like there'd be guys with like bring their own gloves, and some of them were boxing gloves, some Muay Thai gloves. It was like, and it was just like, if there was social media back then, it would have gotten broken up so quick, because it was like, man, they were just beating the shit out of each other. And my brother's always bigger than everybody, so he'd like beat everybody up and everything.
Dude, we had a punk rock, meth out, old school punk rock, meth out gang called AOS, Assholes on Schaefer, which was a cheap beer, but we turned it into Assholes on Speed. And they would go to parties, and I'm a tall guy. I was tall in high school, and like I would get singled out all the time, like that, because they're looking for fights. Just methed out, drunk, and so I spent a lot of time in cars at those parties with one other buddy, and just sat in the car and listen to music and drink beer that way, because it was just always dicks.
How do I believe that, I mean, it's not a bad thing, because my son's grown and I have stepkids, so I don't want them living that life. But I always feel like it's almost a rite of passage to like go through that stuff growing up. Like, you know what I mean? It's because like I can fit in and feel pretty comfortable in any neighborhood. I almost feel like, you know what I mean, within a reasonable amount of time, or like, you know, depending on why I'm there. It's like, you know, and it's because I grew up in such weird situations of like, you never knew if you were going to get into a fight. You had to be ready. If a guy was, you know, those times when like, you know, the guy, you knew that one guy at that party was like into getting in a fight, and you were like, fuck. So you were like on high alert, like, I might have to fucking fight this dude. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't think I was ever that guy, but there were some of those dudes, that were assholes. There's a lot of AOSs, like me growing up too, man, because you're like, fuck, man, like this dude like legit is like on a good one, and you know, a lot of those guys, it's funny because then when you grow up, you don't ever hear what happened to them, and you wonder like, that fucking in jail, or did he die? Did he pick a fight with the wrong person? You know, it's crazy, man. But it's a rite of passage. I didn't want my son going through it. I'm sure at some capacity he did, a little bit more privileged area, but. You know, and then my stepkids for sure, man. I don't think they're going. I seriously doubt that.
I fucking hated it. I never wanted to fight. You know, I would avoid it nonstop. I started working as a young kid. Like, I think my first job was counting worms at a bait and tackle shop, and I was 5, and I just kept going from there. Summer jobs, raking leaves, gardening, all that shit, until I was 13 and started working for a company. Yeah. But I loved your story of your chocolate sales, because I thought that was brilliant.
So we had 2 hustles. An old movie that I wish I remember the name of, and you might even have seen it, gave us an idea when we were a kid. And I was surprised that more people didn't know about it. But my stepdad didn't do much for us growing up, but he did introduce us to a movie. And there was a guy on there. There were some kids on there. So like a 60s movie. I wish I remember the name of it. Where they would get a $20 bill, and they would write happy birthday, whatever. So for instance, I'd have a $20 bill that we'd get somehow selling candies, whatever. I'd write happy birthday Joe on it. And then I'd take it into a liquor store. And then about 5-10 minutes later, 3 or 4 more customers later, my brother would go in there and spend like $1 or $2, like $5, and then say, hey, you didn't give me change for my 20. And then they would say, no, you gave me a 5. And he goes, no, I gave you a 20. It even says happy birthday, Joe. And they go, well, fuck, I must be wrong. They give us the change for the 20.
That's pretty good.
So
how often did that work?
Almost every time.
You're kidding. That's
we'd even forget where we'd go, and then people would be like, fuck you, we know you little assholes. One guy threw a gallon of milk at me one time. Oh no, he kicked a gallon of milk at me. Like, he kicked it out, he fucking kicked it, and like, so we were like,
we
fuck.
know you're calm.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. That was, I would say, probably my, we were doing that around the candy time. So the candy thing was pretty funny, because there was a ice cream man in my neighborhood that, his name was Al. And I think he was a tweaker too, but definitely his wife, because his wife was like, she's fucking crazy. She was crazy. I was like 13 having this chick like smoke tape off a chair one time, just to be funny. I took the tape off. I was like, I got a joint. She's like, oh, that's what's up. Like, you know what I mean? And so he sold World's Finest chocolates. And that was the first like experience of chocolates with me. So I tried to go out and legitimately sell these chocolates. And I'm like a little asshole. Like, I had a tattoo at that time already. And so, like, I'm this kid, and they're like, fuck this kid. So I got smart enough because I don't remember who told me. There was, I think her name was Mama Jean. She was a black lady in my neighborhood. She told me, she's like, you need to put a collared shirt on and go out there and sell these candies. So I did a little bit better. But it wasn't until, like, I got this stack of those. They would do different. It wasn't always just the opera. It was different tickets. So I would bust it down there, because my high school wasn't far from the Fox Theater. And so I'd bust it down there. I'd get these tickets, and they would be like, and the people who were giving me the tickets were so fucking excited to give me these tickets, because they really thought I was going to give them to my friends. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, yeah, I'm going to come. And so I'd go door to door, and I would say, like, and I don't remember what the price was. It might even have been as low as like $20, but I'd go to door, and I'd go to a better neighborhood too. Yeah. I'd go to this neighborhood called Mountain Shadows, which was in Highland. It's like houses that were 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses, and I'd go there, and I'd have my box of chocolates, and then I'd have ticket, and I go, oh, we're doing a fundraiser, and so I can afford to get my own ticket to go to this. Do you want to pay for my ticket? It's $50 or $20, whatever it was. And they'd say no. And I go, okay, well, would you help me raise money by buying candy? It was $2. And I remember I'd have to pay back $1 to this guy, Al, the ice cream man. So I would do every day. I'd go back to the trailer park that I would do this. I would do it a couple times a week. And I think there was 50 chocolates in there, and every single day I'd sell out of that. So I made $50. So then I'm in 7th grade, and I'm a poor kid. I go into 8th grade, and I still remember, like, it was like, that might have been like what gave me the confidence to this day to be an entrepreneur, is that I remember my friend Noah came from like a better part of town, but he would go to that school. And I always envied him because he had good shoes, he had all this good shit. And I remember walking in there that day, like after I had put together like a decent amount of money that summer. And so I was like, I bought my own clothes, I bought my shit, me and my brother. My brother was already cleaning refrigerators, like, he was working for a refrigerator company. We walk in there, and we had new shoes, new everything. And I remember him going like, damn, okay, like, what's up? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I remember thinking like I arrived, like I was part of the cool crowd. Yeah. And that shit lasted for quite some time until I got a job I'm allergic to grass, and I got a job doing landscaping. And I had to wear a mask, like fucking COVID mask, you know what I mean? But I was doing, and then they liked me so much, the people that I was doing landscaping for, that they actually, funny thing is that kind of translated later into the community service Masonic stuff, is that I worked for these people, and he was a Mason. His name is Richard. I still kind of talk to him, and he's an older guy, obviously now. And then, so he realized, what the hell, you never told me you're allergic to grass. He just thought maybe I didn't want to breathe the grass. And then like one time I broke out, and so he started having me wash all the cars, and that was my first like job. Like, and I could actually like drive to that. I got myself like a little like 92, like 91, 90. Well, no, it was like an 89 Ford Escort. Nice. And I drove to work and stuff. But the chocolate shit was amazing. I still see those kids. Selling chocolate. I give them that trick. Nice. I go, look, you can go. Sometimes will tell those kids, like, look, you might not even need a ticket. You can literally get a fake QR code because no one's scanning it because they'd rather buy the chocolate than scan it. And I had a mom call me. I was leaving the movies one time in Redlands. This was like 2 years ago. I'm walking to my truck. This kid's like, hey, man, you want to do this? And I said, hey, bro, cut the shit. I know this ain't no charity. I used to do this. And I said, dude, I'll buy your whole box if you tell me the truth. He goes, oh, yeah. It's like, I'm helping my mom. I said, all right, cool. Bought the whole box. And then I said, dude, I'm going to give you a fucking tip. His mom, because I said, you need any other sales tips? I said, who knows? You're 14. You could work for me one day. Who knows? Give him my note. His fucking mom called me, thanked me. His mom was just like, thank you for buying that, and thank you for the advice and this and that. I wonder, like,
you motivated him.
I motivated him because I was like, dude, you could fucking kill this. And he's like looking at me like, why are you helping me? Like, you know what I mean? And I was like, because I drive nice cars. Now I have some nice cars. I live in a nice place. I'm doing well for myself. But man, I'm still that fucking kid. Yeah. Like, dude, man, this, like, the older I get, the more I realize I don't even want to be the person that I wanted to be when I was a fucking kid. Yeah, sure. I want to be the kid that's like, I want to be the guy that's like dirty, paint trains, doing dumb shit. And I almost got arrested like 2 months ago. I'm going on a fucking tangent right here. Go. I almost got arrested like 2 months ago. My boys that listen to everything I do is going to laugh about this shit. So I'm painting. I'm 45 years old. So we go behind this like rock quarry thing. And there's a ditch back there. And we used to do this thing called Sunday service. And it's funny because I would tell people this and they'd be like, that's blasphemous as fuck. But it's like called Sunday service. I'm going out painting, you know what I mean? And so we go painting every Sunday. And it's most of the time it's with guys about my age, but we're still actively painting. So we go and paint. And I'm painting with, I'd say like 6 people. Like there's a couple carloads full. Yeah. So I drive a Tesla there first. This is important part. This is an important part of the story. So I go paint this shit. I got a video. I'm going to send you the video because my boy's like secretly recording the whole interaction with the cops. And so we're painting and then a cop rolls up right behind me behind the fence as we're painting. I was really loving my piece too. And he goes, looking pretty good. I turn around. There's a fucking cop. So naturally you would think that I'm like gonna be like fuck, but then like everybody else is freaking out. I got a couple guys that are maybe in their early 30s, a couple guys in their 40s. Everybody's kind of like whatever. So we had to walk and follow him along the fence to the car, and he's all, you guys are the cars parked over there? Yeah, the car's parked over there. So I realized so I text my wife and I go, my wife knows that I got a lawyer and shit like that, and I text my wife and I go, yeah, the cops just fucking caught us, this and that. And then she's like, are you good? I said, I'm going to be fine. So I'm voice texting this. So the dude next to me, those fucking was like, motherfucker, we ain't going to be good. We're going to jail right now. And I said, we're not going to jail. Because I'm already like, I'm a sales guy, right? You know what I mean? So I'm like, we're not fucking going to jail right now. So like, and this wasn't a dishonest statement. Almost every guy there was either ex-felons, but years ago, or sober. So one part of it was kind of true. So we're leaving. We walk to the car. The cop walks right over to me because he gets there first. And, like, I'm walking pretty quick. And then my boy Mike was like, why you walking so fast, fool? Like, we're going to jail right now. I said, we're not going to jail. You guys are all fucking paranoid. Like, so we walk. We get to the cops are there. And the cop's like, who drives the Tesla? And I go, me. And then he goes, are you fucking serious? He's like, you're
out here painting.
You're fucking, what are you doing, man? And so I said, officer, I said, I'm going to be honest with you. You can take me to jail if you want. You can do whatever you want. You can send me a ticket. I said, we do a thing called Sunday service. Technically not lying. We do a thing called Sunday service. So this is Sunday service. These guys are all ex-vandals, this and that. We didn't think we were causing any harm. It's better than us go doing something. I start doing this. My boy's recording the whole fucking thing, and they're just like, this motherfucker. And I was like, I'm sorry, you just give me a ticket. And he's like looking around like he's having like a moral dilemma, this cop. And then he's younger than me too. So this is even worse. And so it's like, so I look around my boys, and they're all like frustrated, like, fuck, we're going to jail. This fool corpse is fucking doing this shit. And like, so then the cop was like, hey, buddy, man, like, you know what? It's a good thing that what you're doing, man. Keep these guys sober, this and that, and leave.
Like outreach.
So all my boys were like, what the fuck just happened? Why the hell? How did you do that? I said, I'm telling you, no tickets, no nothing. And I was like, I knew I wasn't going to jail. So it's like, it's funny because my boy that I'm the closest with, that I paint with a lot, I don't even think he was surprised because we have some sales project that we work on. And he was like, dude, I just knew as soon as you stomped ahead to talk to the cops, But I guess where I took the scenic route to get to this point is that I'm still like, I think I'm more that guy than I am the guy that sits in board meetings and has to like hear about the analytical part of shit and like this and the polished version of like business. Like I'm like the grinder. Like I want to like go out there. I want to close the deal. I want to do all the like fun shit that comes with like sales and interactions with people and shit. I don't want to be the guy. When I was younger, I used to think I wanted to be the guy that was in the penthouse suite and all this other bullshit. At one point, I even moved to the Martin. You know where the Martin is here? No. The Martin. It's the Panorama now. It's off Dean Martin. It's a high-rise condo facing the Raider Stadium. I had moved there. I had this beautiful place. I'm looking around like, a bunch of douchebags live here. You know what I mean? I was like, why am I living here? I just want to get out of my lease already. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. Like,
well, and even though you bring soul to business, you also fucking kick ass. Like you've done a lot of amazing shit, and not just. I mean, not every business survives. Yeah. But like, you've had a good career of building businesses. Like I was pretty impressed.
I appreciate that. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot of failures.
And they're sustainable too. Like you got businesses you started back in the beginning that for the most part, that's still flowing.
Yeah. I started a cannabis business. The funny thing is I went to college and I got an education because I thought that was the right thing to do. I went to school. I became an optometrist.
And this, if we back up a little bit for the listeners, you had a son at 16.
Yeah.
Like you were in school and like
I got her pregnant at 16, had him at 17, and I was barely going to school when that happened.
That's huge. Like that's hardcore.
Yeah. So it's crazy. The crazy thing about it is that that's even a unique story on how like I really pulled it together back then. That's kind of funny because I've never really told this story for like the world to hear. But the funny thing is I was working at McDonald's when my buddy Ronnie was a stoner, and he was working at McDonald's, and I was doing the landscaping thing, and he was like, dude, you need to come work at McDonald's, man. There's hot chicks to work here. There's weed. Oh, okay, cool. I want to work at McDonald's. And it was in this shitty neighborhood, and it was like, so the manager was like, you're hired. I didn't even interview. I walked in there and said, hey, I'm Ronnie's friend. He's like, you're hired. So I was working there, and I was about to have a kid, and I had started doing some community service because of graffiti. To back up a little bit even further is that I was doing this stupid community service because I got caught doing graffiti and I got off. The judge actually had told me like, you're good. Like, you know what I mean? Like don't do it again.
Yeah.
So my dumbass, like I had what was called a Pentel marker on me in the fucking courtroom.
No fucking way.
And so my dumbass was leaving the courthouse, and then I caught a tag outside of the courthouse. And the fucking cop was right there and took me right back in. And seen the judge. The judge to this day, I'll never forget. He's a black guy with like a little bit of an afro. He put his hands in his face.
Yeah.
And he was like, "What the fuck did?" He didn't say what the fuck. He's like, "What did you just do?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay, 500 hours of community service." I was like, "What the fuck is that?" Sounded like I know I fucked around and found. So I was doing community service. I was working for this landscaping people. And he's a Mason, and he goes, well, I can sign off your community service hours if you do stuff around the Masonic Temple. And so it got even better, because then I go to the Masonic Temple. They said, hey, do you know how to play basketball? So, yeah, I can play basketball. I was a pretty decent basketball player. And so I go there, and they were like, well, if you join the basketball team, we'll write off community service hours for that too. And if you join, it's called DMLA. If you join DMLA, we'll write off community service hours for that too. And so I was in DMLA, which was like the junior Masons, and then I took a liking to it. I don't know if it was like the cloaks or shit. I don't know what it was, but it was just cool to me. And I was like, all right, I think I'm going to join this. I moved up through the ranks. I put like 15 of my friends in the first year. And we were like the hoodlum chapter. Like there was all these other chapters, very polished, comb to the side hair, and I got all my friends are fucking bald headed, tattooed already.
You created the conspiracies within.
No shit. Yeah, they're all coming in, and then, dude, it was like some fucked up shit, man. We had like then my ex-wife, who lives here in Vegas, she'd probably love this place too, man. She's like kind of the little smoking cloves, little goth girl was in there.
Nice.
And then so she was like, she came in and she wanted to become what's called a sweetheart. Sweetheart is like the girl that comes to the meetings, and she's the girl of the group. And so she comes, and I remember like the first night I met her, like it's we had put like chains on the floor from a play thing, and then the dark with like a light down on like a thing, and we had interviewed her, and she's like, what the hell? And she's free. She was like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, only if you bring bacon every single meeting. It was some stupid shit. But anyways, I met her, so I was technically doing community service, joined this thing, meet her. Her family lives in a nice house on the other side of town in East Highland. And so then we weren't really boyfriend and girlfriend. So we had hooked up. And then she calls me and says, like, I think I'm pregnant. And, of course, like, I'm just like, no, you're not. Like, because, of course, like, I'm just an expert at that age of, like, that. And so then, like, so I have my son. But where I was going with this is that I smoked a lot of weed back then. And so I'm at McDonald's, and I'd become a shift manager. And so do you ever remember cheeseburger night at McDonald's?
No, I was never.
Yeah. Cheeseburger night was like 29-cent cheeseburgers on, like, Wednesday night or some shit like that. So I would come in a little early, and I'd have my Walkman on, be listening to music, and I'd make a shitload of cheeseburgers. I'd get them ready, and so they only needed to be what's called queued up, like microwaved up and sent up front. And I would make like 500 cheeseburgers. So when cheeseburger night hit, it was easy. Boom, boom, need 10 cheeseburgers. So I'm sending up these cheeseburgers when cheeseburger night started, and I see like a line forming like next to the line. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, everyone's like, who are these people? And then Ivania, this other manager, was like, hey, there's no meat on any of these cheeseburgers. But I was high as fuck. I made like 500 cheeseburgers with no meat. And it was all stuck together, so I couldn't like just put meat on them. So this dude was trying to fight me. Like, it was bad. So I was about to have a kid. So I went on my break where I usually would smoke weed. I jump over this wall, like to like this dentist office next door, and I would smoke weed on my break. I jumped over there, and I started like getting really down on myself. And I was like, man, if I can't make fucking cheeseburgers, I can't be a dad. So I go home that night, and I give my bong. I had a black skull bong, like a bong with a sticker of a skull, and I gave it to this guy named Mouse, like this little cholo dude. I said, here's my fucking weed. Here's my pipes. He's like, nah, homie, I'm going to fucking keep these for you, but you're going to come back and get them. And I've only smoked weed. That was in 96. I've only smoked weed twice since then.
Wow.
Because I'm so fucking And then the thing is when I got in the cannabis industry, I had cancer, so I tried to smoke some Blue Dream. Some Blueberry Haze. Okay. I tried to smoke Blueberry Haze, got so fucking paranoid. I was like, well, weed ain't for me. Then on 420 the last guy I smoked weed with was a guy named Jimmy. On my 20-year anniversary of not smoking weed, he happened to be in Vegas. I was living out here. I'm partners with a dispensary out here and everything, so I got some weed. And then we're playing pool at my house, and he's like, bro, you're going to smoke with me or what? I was like, fuck it. It's been 20 years. Smoke weed. So high, so paranoid. I said, fuck, dude, I love everything about weed, but smoking this shit, I was like so paranoid. I was like, bro, I just want this to go away. So I just ghosted everybody that night and went to bed. But then I love everything else about weed. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know what would have happened if I had kept smoking weed. If it wasn't for the cheeseburger gate, as I call it, like, dude, I would have maybe still been smoking weed. I don't know. But, so I didn't think I'd be in cannabis as a career. That's for sure. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, that was your, you want to talk about how that got started?
Yeah. So I was working in optometry. The irony,
you went to school, got your degree in optometry.
Yeah. So I got an associate's, bachelor's, and then I ended up getting, a master's in vision science. And then I got my, it's called an OD, optometry doctor degree, or from the ABO. It's the Associated Board of Optometry. And it's basically your permit to practice, And so it's not a doctorate. Like a lot of people, ophthalmologists are I shouldn't say they're not doctors. Those are physicians. Yeah. Where an optometrist is like, I don't want to take credit away from myself or other optometrists, but thing is that, you go to school a little bit further, you get your doctorate, and then you become like an ophthalmologist where you can perform surgery. So I became an optometrist, which sounds really cool now, but at the time it was just like the natural thing. I went to school first to be drug and alcohol counseling, which is so weird that that's what I do also now. Yeah. I went to school because I grew up in an addict home, and I didn't want to be in retail forever. So I go to that. Realized about 9 months in that I was going to take a huge pay cut. So anyways, I get my associates. I'm like, what the fuck do I do with associates? So I'll go into nursing. Nursing, I realize I don't like feces, so fucking I'm never going to change a bedpan. So what do you do with that? So it's like, and so then a counselor, a career counselor was like, you should go into optometry. So I was like, all right, cool, optometry, cool. Make twice what I make in retail. Yeah. So I go into optometry, and then I get a job working for, mean, fuck it, I don't care. Lens Crafters and Exotica at Lens Crafters. I leave Vans and I go work there. And 11 months later, I find out I have cancer, which my dad died from, same cancer. And so my real dad.
Yeah.
And so I told
what kind of cancer was that?
Bladder
Oh.
cancer. And my dad had died from bladder cancer. And so I call my boss. I tell my boss, like, hey, I already got some shifts covered, but I am going to need some time off.
I got cancer.
Yeah. My bad. You know what I mean? I could have fucking lied to them. And I said, I'm calling because I need to figure out what do I need to do come my 12-month here so I can get my insurance. So he comes in my store in Palm Desert, which is a whole other, it's a circle. Weird how things work, because that's where my cannabis business is now. But so he comes to my store, he takes me to coffee and lays me off. He says, you're not past your probation period. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, blah, blah, blah. We're going to give you $1,000 for every month you've worked here, $11,000. I think I got 8-9 or something after taxes. So I go back to my store, and I remember Lonnie, she was my eye care specialist, kind of like my manager of the store. And she's like, so what happened? Like, are you good? I said, oh, no, Friday's my last day. And she's like, you're fucking lying. And I remember they were like, I didn't want them to boycott or anything, but they were pissed. Like, everyone's like calling corporate, like, what are you doing? Like, this is an amazing dude.
Cancer patient.
Yeah, no shit.
And you were good. Amazing dude.
Later I find out that I could have sued them, but I signed, and I remember him pressuring me to like sign that shit on the spot. And I was like, I gotta think about this, you know? And it's because I took the severance, I couldn't sue him. So I'm driving home, and I decided to take a detour home that same day, and I was gonna drive to Orange County. And I was gonna, I remember I left that day like at 1, and I was thinking to myself, fuck this, cancel the rest of my appointments, reschedule them. I'm going to Vans, because I was gonna go get my job back at Vans. I'm driving there, and I called this dude that like a couple weeks before that, I had been painting. The story I said trains before, but it was actually I had been painting trains with them. But this particular night, it was like some bottom of this bridge that had collapsed. We were painting some big stuff on them there because I was an optometrist that still was painting like graffiti, which is just crazy in itself. But I'm painting, and this dude Bud was like, hey man, you should start a delivery company. And this is before I was gonna get laid off. And I was like, I don't know shit about weed. And I was like, they were like, okay, cool. He's like, whatever. It was like a short conversation. And so I'm driving on my way to Vans, and then I remember that conversation. So I called Bud, and I was like, hey man, I told him the whole story. I said, do you think I could start this cannabis shit? Well, back then no one was calling this cannabis back then. I was like, do you think I start this weed delivery thing? Yeah. And then he was like, yeah, dude, you're smarter than my boss. I was like, all right, cool. So I got off. I remember I got off the freeway, turned around, shot straight to his house, sat there. He kind of schooled me on what weed maps was, all this other shit. So, and I had recently just found out that my parents, which is another kind of crazy story. My ex-wife's parents kind of took me in, when I got her pregnant, and that they had been growing weed for a long time. And they had moved into the house that I had lived in. And, prior to that, so they'd been growing weed. So I start putting the dots together. So I call them and I say, hey, I want to get into this industry. Would you help me? And they're like, you need to talk to, do you know Mark from Voodoo? And I was like, yeah, I know Mark. And they were like, well, he's been selling our weed forever. And I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. So I go over to Mark. Mark's like, dude, you got $10,000 credit. And back then I was like, that's weird. Like, why would you give me credit? Like, who gets credit on weed? Right, you know what I mean? And so, but I never ended up taking. I ended up taking that like a few times, but it was just like one of those like, hey man, I'll give you the other $200 later kind of thing. Yeah. But so I started putting it together. I opened a Weed Maps in Redlands. That number and that route is still open. Like that's 2010.
Wow.
And then we opened a few more routes and a few more routes, and now totally in the network, there's 27 routes. Like in the network, that's total. Not all of them are open under the Cali Care Group name. But there's 27 routes, and we do a little bit of everything. We have distribution.
And I was super excited because you're the largest independently owned cannabis company, right?
Cannabis delivery
in California,
company.
Delivery company.
Cannabis delivery company. Yeah,
that's phenomenal. Considering so many of us small cannabis companies got smashed when adult use came into play.
Yeah. So that was a shit show.
Yeah.
So we at one point I was not on board with that. I remember I was living here. I got invited to a wedding out here, and I ended up coming to the wedding, and then I got talked into being a partner here, and then because the allure of Vegas was so high, like I ended up moving here and putting a guy in charge out there, my best friend, the same guy that was just on the Kardashians. And, I put him in charge of the company. And then he was, I was pretty set on not being legal. Like, I was like, fuck these guys. I have thousands of customers. Like, I don't need to be legal. But what ended up happening was all of the people I was doing business with started becoming legal. And so it was becoming harder because back then, so it's not so much like this anymore. I know people don't like to talk about it, but back then people were very paranoid about saying that they were doing anything outside of like the legal side of things, Yeah. And there was even a time here where I took it on the chin. Like the company that I was partners with that I probably won't mention, but it'll probably be mentioned if this thing airs, is that we had opened a delivery service prematurely here, and we advertised in the magazine, the Vegas Cannabis magazine, everything else. I met Steph and Bill at a ice cream shop actually, and we knew that we had opened prematurely, but it was all under my name, like the bank account, like just it was just my shit, And because I knew that those guys at the time, I thought to myself, well, these guys are over there doing the legal part of this, so I'm gonna do this to build up our clientele, and then when the shop opens, like we're just gonna push them all to the shop. Well, my house got raided here, like, you know what I mean? And so I got shut down, and then they were pretty much like, hey, who's your partners? And I was like, fuck you, take me to jail. And that was it. It was kind of the end of it. And so, but that also kind of accelerated my drinking problem, you know what I mean?
Of course.
And so PTSD and shit. And then, but then my California business, like, because I was like a name in the cannabis industry out there already, I started having people that were like city officials, people with money. People were like kind of throwing licenses at me at a certain point. They were just like, hey, we got a license, we don't know what to do with it. So I jump on that license, And so I kind of just got thrown into the license side of it. And now it's funny because like I'm fully licensed company, but it's funny because a lot of those people are so fucking dirty on the other side now. You know what I mean? To where it's like, what happened to this like paranoia of being, you know what I mean? But then, the DCC, like not to throw anybody from the DCC under the bus, but the Department of Cannabis Control out there, but there's like 35 employees policing a whole state. So it's like,
And back when we were in California, it was all starting off because we worked with them to we helped get the bill pushed through, which made us a lot of enemies in the growing world. But we were like, look, if you have somebody in jail for cannabis, a family member, and you're going to tell them, hey, this bill could pass right now, but it's not perfect on the business side, stay in jail for a few more years until we get it just right.
I've never thought about that way because I was
so upset with people. They were like, oh, we just need to keep making it better. And I'm like, there's people fucking in jail. And in that bill, we put those people can get out of jail as long as they were nonviolent. And that still went through, even though Governor Brown fucked us on that because he made it vertical at that point. He took out the moratorium that we had put in. He took that out so big companies could come in. Investors switched around. The dispensaries just wanted the big. It turned into a shit show after that. That's why we slowly just backed out. And we saw what was going to happen. CBD was just getting big at that point, and it was just flooding the market with that shit.
Jesus Christ. Man, that CBD shit, man. That was like chasing unicorns. I knew that was temporary. You know what I mean? I opened 2 CBD stores, technically. You know what I mean?
Well, here in Vegas, right? In the Container Park.
Yeah, I opened a CBD store out of pure ego. Because there's a guy that he opened the first CBD dispensary in Vegas. And him and I were friends at the time. And he told me, he goes, bro, you'd be wasting your time opening a CBD store because you don't know. I run CBD here. And I was like, back then I was drinking. I was like, fuck this guy. So I opened 2 of them. You know what I mean? But the funny thing is that, we're kind of friends again. But I remember, man, when I ran into him at Starbucks not that long ago. And then he told me, and he was like, dude, that was a little bit of a dig. And I was like, a little bit. I spent like $100,000 opening CBD stores just because you told me I wouldn't. Which, that's dumb shit, man. Like, you know what I mean? But that's just.
Were you in your 20s at that point?
No. I moved to Vegas, I moved to Vegas in 2015.
Oh, okay.
And I opened that CBD store that I opened on Charleston and Valley View. I opened Lux Hemp over there, and I opened that in 2017 or 18.
Okay.
I opened it, and then I opened another one in Container Park in 2019 that didn't really take any traction because it was towards the end of 2019. I was getting sober, And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And I remember during COVID, I'd be downtown working out and shit like that because I lost a lot of weight during COVID and got sober. And I would go to Container Park, and they would let you still, people that were walking around down there, they'd let you walk through the park, and then I'd walk by my store that I couldn't even open. You know what I mean? But they didn't charge us rent. They were good about that. Downtown Properties was cool about not charging us rent during that shit. And then even when they opened back up for the first year, they're charging us like $300. So it was pretty cool.
That's really cool.
You know what I mean? It could have been worse. But yeah, I got out of that partnership here on the dispensary side. I jumped into another partnership with another dispensary here. Just as shitty. Like it was like, and then I realized, I was like, man, well, I don't know if I realized it now or I realized it then, but I realized that at a certain point that's like, it wasn't my thing. You know what I mean? So it was like, I was jumping in on somebody else's dream, you know what I mean, to do this. So I got out of the second one, and then I got offered to jump into a third situation, and I decided instead to invest money in a sushi place because I just rolled in the sushi because I was like, I believe in this dude that makes me my sushi rolls more than these morons running the cannabis industry out here. You know,
smart move.
Yeah,
sushi is still happening.
Yeah, no shit. Like, and I'm getting a check every month, and I don't even go. I haven't been to the sushi place 6 months.
What's the name of the sushi place?
Oka
right,
Sushi.
just for the locals, they can go.
Yeah, Oka. It's on Blue Diamond and Cimarron. Nice. Larry's my partner over there. Nice. I could be honest with you, I could walk in there a day that Larry's not there, and no one probably know who I was. I'd have to say I'm Joe, and they go, "Oh, okay, you're Joe," because I just don't know a lot of what he's doing over there.
That's great. That's a partner you want.
Yeah. Every so often, I jump into the cameras. Like recently, I jumped to a camera because I changed my email, and I had to change the email for the cameras. And that was the first time that I'd even seen what was going on in there for probably a year.
Wow.
But, you know what I mean?
That's solid, though.
But that's really good.
If you're making money and your partners are happy and everyone's flowing, I mean, that's a type of passive income you want.
I tried to give him the damn place back. Well, my equity back. Yeah. Like, I was like, dude, you can just buy me out slowly if you want. He was like, no, I like you being my partner.
Nice.
All right, that's cool. Consider I don't do shit. Like, that's cool. Like, you know, I don't make sushi. He won't even let me behind the bar. So, you know,
probably a good idea.
Yeah, I got the sushi thing going, a candle thing going. I got a little bit of...
Well, how the fuck did you get into Vans?
Vans?
Yeah, when you were working for Vans. Was that your 20s?
Yeah. So I started working in Vans when I was 20. Because, so I worked at first when I left McDonald's. I left McDonald's because I got into it with my manager, threw a fucking breakfast sandwich at her. And I was already kind of in the shoes, and so I went over and got a job actually at Foot Locker at first. And I worked at Foot Locker until they closed that Foot Locker, and they tried to transfer me to Long Beach from San Bernardino. Because I was 18. I got hired at Foot Locker as a key holder because I was a shift manager at McDonald's. I went from key holder to general manager in like 2 months because it was in a shitty neighborhood. Nobody wanted to manage that store. Yeah. So they were like, you want to be the store manager? I was making $34,500. I thought I was rich. You know what I mean? Yeah. I was just like, fuck yeah, I'll do that. Because then, you know, I bought my first house at 18 because of that. So when they closed that Foot Locker in San Bernardino at the Carousel Mall, I was always more into like Vans and shit, even though I worked at Foot Locker. So they were opening. They had a Vans in Redlands, California, but they were opening one in the Inland Center Mall, which is the better mall. It's one of those situations like we talked about. They opened another mall down the way. Yeah. They were opening a Vans there, but I was in the Redlands store talking to the manager, John. I remember because I was friends with him, and he was in bands and shit too. And he said, "Hey, they're hiring for a manager. They're hiring for managers at the." And this is when I was 20. They're hiring for managers at the Inland Center store, but you'd be doing your training here. So I was like, "Fuck, I want to apply." Well, he got me on the phone with Don, the DM, like that night. And so Don's like talking to me, and he's like, "Come to an interview." I went to the interview. He's like, "All right, we're gonna hire you as assistant manager." I was fucking stoked. I was like, "Cool, I'm gonna work for Vans." Well, then the person that they hired to be the manager, for some reason, I still remember her name, even though I never worked a day with her. Her name was Roxanne. And so they said, Roxanne's going to be your boss. I talked to her on the phone once, never met her because she ended up not taking the job. And they were like, well, we're going to give you the store. And I was like, okay. Brand new fucking store in a mall. Even John was pissed, the guy that hired me. He's like, what the fuck? This is a slow-ass store and they're hiring you to do this? But I did run a high-volume Foot Locker before that. So I got I got that, and then I was already throwing small shows on the side, just little local punk shit because I was in a band. You know what I mean? And I guess you would consider like post-punk shit now. Like I was throwing stuff like that, little grime shit, ska shit, like just little little fuckhead shows, you know what I mean? And
it's a good spot. The desert loves that shit.
I loved it. You know what I mean? I threw at this club called Copacetic and like, you know, this other place that turned into a boot barn. I don't remember the name of it. And I was throwing these little makeshift shows that were like literally like a shitty PA. One place, literally, I found out after I'd been throwing shows there for a while, it was a fucking karaoke machine that we were doing. But it was like 10 people would show up. You know what I mean? And so it was like all fucked up. But, you know, and then I was working for a while at Vans, and then AFI was starting to be pretty popular. And so I hit it off. AFI released the shoe. And at that point, I had already been transferred to another store in Riverside, and then AFI came in, and I hit it off with those guys. Like, they just really liked me, and it was cool. And Kerry King used to go in that store from Slayer and shit, and everyone kind of liked me. So then my boss had seen one time that, like, hey, like, this fucking dude gets along with all these guys. He speaks their language. So there was this flyer. It was like this makeshift club flyer thing that got sent to all the stores that, like, hey, apply to go out on the Warped Tour and work the booth at the Warped Tour that people would buy like shirts at and shit. Yeah. So I applied. So I was like, fuck yeah, that'd be cool. I could be out of my store. And the whole caveat to me getting hired to do that job was, because they weren't expecting a store manager to take it, is that I said, like, you know, I will make sure that my assistant manager can hold this shit down, and I'll hire another key holder and make sure this store is like on point. They were like, okay, if you fuck it up once, that's it. Like, you're going back to your store. So I had hired like really strong people to run my store while I was gone. So I'd go out for 3 or 4 months on the Warped Tour. I was out for like 2 weeks selling that shit, and then they realized, like, dude, you shouldn't be back here selling shirts. You should be with the bands. And so they were quickly like, dude, you need to be a promoter. So really what it was is that there would be van sponsored shows. Like the Warped Tour would go around, and there would be off shows, because there would be like a 2-day layover or whatever. And then a band that was on Warped Tour, for instance, like a Yellow Card or this Yellow Card, there was like Amberlin, bands like that. They would do these off shows, but Vans, because they were van sponsored bands, they would expect somebody to be there and kind of negotiate in the band's favor, like, hey, make sure the band gets paid, make sure they don't get fucked up, make sure that nothing ends up on camera. And I ended up a handler, exactly. Like later on, people would say that. So I was that guy. And then I just started realizing, because I started knowing these guys. Like, I started really knowing these bands. Like, there was bands like a band called Nonpoint, and there was these bands like I have this crazy story that, you know, you may or may not get into if you want, about how I kind of low-key think I helped Papa Roach get signed.
Oh, really?
It's weird, because it's a really weird story. And I think people think I'm bullshitting. People that were there know that I'm not bullshitting, but it's kind of a crazy story. So I was like friends with, like, you know, a bunch of bands, and then bands that were kind of on the road with Warped Tour but not on Warped Tour. They would be opening bands for other bands, and Alien Ant Farm was one of those bands and shit. And so anyways, I just would be like, well, fuck, like, I'm smart enough to go into some of these clubs and say, like, what's your slowest night? So I walked right into a club one time at 20. I walked right into a club, and I was like, hey, I want to throw shows here. And they're like, what do you know about throwing shows? I said, I work for Vans on the Warped Tour. They go, okay, what night do you want?
Yeah.
They didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. Like, this dude, John, I remember, like, at the Vibe, and he was just like, really? You know these bands? I was like, yeah. And so I had this fucking silver flip phone with a bunch of pictures of me with bands, and they were like, you can get this band here? You can get this? I was like, yeah. I didn't know if I could or not.
All right.
And so he's like, you have Thursdays. And so I would start booking local bands, and I booked some shitty bands, man. But then I started booking. Facebook came around. So then I came up with a name called Metal Jesus. And then I started reaching out to bands like, hey, remember we met on MySpace, I mean. And I would be like, hey, remember we met at this time and this time. And then I ended up booking Every Time I Die, I think. And then I ended up booking Every Time I Die, God Forbid, and another band at it's weird because I have the flyer hanging at my house here in Vegas, the folded flyer that I blew up and framed in my house here for the first big show I threw. And I'm friends with the guys from God Forbid now, which is awesome. Some of those guys are in other bands now and stuff. And I booked this band, and I booked it there, and it was at this place called The Showcase, and that night was like 300 people there. And it was like, and I had already booked a bunch of bands. That show though put me on the map, because so many people were talking about that show, about how cool it was, to where, like, I was officially like a promoter at that point. And then I was still going out on the Warped Tour, but it became to where I was out 4 times, and the 5th time I went to go out, I was out for like 2 weeks. and I really wanted to go home because they had booked a bunch of shit bands. Like I just like the Dotsons, the fucking just shit bands, and I was like, man, Warped Tour really started going. I mean, it was already a poppy thing,
Right.
but it was like really bad at that point. And I was like, so I was more. I always used to say, my dream thing that I would have stayed on to the end was Ozfest. Like, you know what I mean? But But I happened to be on the Warped Tour. But I had friends at Hot Topic, and they would get Ozfest tickets, and I'd get Warped Tour, and there was a lot of people that were more Warped Tour-ish, and I was more Ozfest, so I'd go down and like, yo, what's up, Christine? I got these tickets, and they'd be like, yo, I got tickets to Ozfest, and so I'd get a lot of the grindcore, death metal, like, you know what I mean, those tickets, and because that was more my style, and then I would give them like Yellow Card and fucking Story of the Year and shit tickets, and I'd be like, yeah, cool, go, go watch these bands, But it was cool, and then I did that for a long time. I did that really until right around the time maybe I finished school. Like I was doing that, like off and on. You know what I mean?
You were a dad.
Yeah, I was dad.
Working full time.
Yeah.
Pulling shows.
Yeah, I was doing shows. I was not home a lot. I was drinking. I was out. I was doing. But I could say that I'm not gonna throw under the bus because she watches all these and listens to these. But I had a very understanding wife, and our relationship wasn't the traditional marriage. She was kind of doing her own thing, and I was doing my own thing. It's the easiest way to put it. We were co-paying.
Yeah.
We were co-parenting, And so
you were taken in by her parents, right?
Her parents are amazing.
Yeah,
like they're amazing.
I mean, all of them. But it's a nice mentorship you got.
Yeah, he's an old school. He's a general contractor. They were involved with the Masonic Lodge, and they grew weed, and it was crazy. You know what I mean? And it was like, and still to this day they grow weed. They're in their 70s. They just like growing weed.
Yeah. I mean,
my mom makes edibles for us. My pops grows really good genetics. You know what I mean? He's came up with like, a lot of good strains, you know what I mean, and stuff. And like he just it's crazy because at a certain point a few years ago I realized that he can't really coach me in business anymore because I've surpassed what he's done in business, but he can still coach me in life, you know what I mean? And like I get nervous still when some shit's gone haywire in my life, and then I go over there because I'm waiting for the lecture. You know what I mean? I'm like, fuck. I went into a public deal a year ago where I took my company into a public company like an idiot because I thought it was the exit strategy I was looking for. And it went really bad. They were like using my company as basically like a pump and dump, like if anybody knows what that is. And so it took me about $250,000 and a lot of effort to get out of it. But I'd kind of wrapped my parents and my employees up into that shit show too, so it was like a lot of stress on me. And so when I got out of it, of course, like I was waiting for the lecture, like okay, this is what happened. And it was more of like, hey, sorry you went through it, but you always figure it out, which is kind of what I wanted to hear, but I didn't think I'd hear, you know what I mean? They're like, you always figure it out, you know what I mean? And so shit, like my current wife, amazing woman. She was so supportive through all that. She was just like, hey, like you've done way more shit than anybody, that I know have done. So like you'll get through it. You know what I mean? And I think everybody deserves like a person like that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, cannabis is interesting. I got a newfound love for cannabis. I hated it a year ago. I didn't want to do this shit anymore. But now, like, dude, it's just cranking.
I love cannabis. I've grown to just not really like what it's turned into.
Oh yeah,
as far as the industry wise, it's just gotten so tight, and there was so many opportunities for people, and that's got pushed out by politicians and rich companies and buyouts. And the biggest thing in cannabis now is owning a license, because that's where you make the money, by reselling your license.
Oh yeah,
that, and
people
which is just
flip
ridiculous.
License. Well, Vegas is bad.
Vegas is hardcore with that.
Vegas is bad.
California, they're doing it. It was a bummer to see a lot of companies go down, including ours. It was just one of those like.
What did you do in Canada?
We had an edible company called Giggle Therapeutics.
Giggle
and
Therapeutics.
We had a Giggle Butter, which was an infused coconut oil.
Yeah.
And we were ahead of our time. We were doing gluten free. We did vegan, all organic, and then we did little dessert bites. I did caramels for a while. We had beef jerky for a while.
Beef jerky is cool.
Beef jerky. And we were doing the whole medical world. And then, and that's why then we got political with it to get people out of jail. That was our, big thing. I was getting signatures when the first cannabis bill came out. I was 19.
Was that in 2009?
No, that was
way before that, right?
Yeah. That was in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, in the 90s, the first one, it didn't get passed. I think it was even called 420.
I kind of remember that.
And
I was in
college.
Happened.
Yeah, I was in college, and I was getting signatures, and that one didn't pass. And I was involved with the whole activism. There was a chick in San Luis Obispo named the Wood Nymph. She had a radio show that she talked about cannabis a lot. And I started working with her, just doing outreach and going out. And so, yeah, I've seen that industry. And then I used to go to like hemp festivals all over. And then I started working for the Yerba Mate company. And so I would go and, rep Yerba Mate at hemp festivals and all that shit. And
nice tie-in.
So yeah, it was great. And I was a big stoner, and then I found yerba mate, and I can't drink coffee that much. It fucks with my stomach, and then it really messes my nervous system up at night. So I can't sleep. I get twitchy, and it's just not good. And I love the taste and everything about it, but just my body doesn't like it. So when I found yerba mate, I was like eating ginseng a lot at that time, studying herbology, and yerba mate came into my life. My friend had a restaurant that he was a partner in, and these two college students started it as a senior project with another guy, and who was from Argentina, and he was drinking it. And they were all surfers, and they'd drink it after they'd go surf, and so they started as a senior project, and then they're like, "This is kind of good." The people who were in that company at the time all came from a lot of money. Westlake and San Rafael and all that shit, and so they had family that threw money at it, and they got some investors, but it started really small, and it went great with fucking weed, So you got that energy, but it wasn't tweaky and all that. So yeah, I love the combo, and but yeah, that whole cannabis.
I like yerba mate. Yeah, I drink it. I don't drink it a lot, but I drink it when it's available. Like if it's someplace I need energy and I don't want to drink coffee at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something, I drink it for sure. You know what I mean? And then there's a lot of different kratom and kava that'll give you energy too.
Yeah. Well, and it's all like about the amount. I mean, opium will give you energy until you drink too much of it or smoke too much of it.
Yeah, that's true, right? I guess that's how it started. Like the feel-good drug.
I mean, I mentioned this to you before. So through Yerba Mate, I was at the Natural Product Expo. We had a booth there, and I think it was like 1998, maybe, somewhere around that time, end of the 90s, when kava was legalized. And it was illegal along with stevia, and I think there was one other one. And at that time, so there was still this underground movement that was combining it, that there was a lot of Hawaiians that were selling it on a gray market. And then there was a company, I forget what they were called, but they had Happy Camper was one of their products, and they were just taking herbs and throwing them in all these little pills. Yeah. And then there was another company called Ecstasy that was doing herbal ecstasy, and they had like non-tobacco cigarettes, all these things. The guy was like a young guru. At that time, there was like, everyone thought they were gurus in the natural product world, But the herbs, man, we would get these just amazing herbs. I would get fucked up out of my head just doing shots of, like, I'd do valerian, and then I'd do drink yerba mate, and then I'd go find some other downer, and they'd have like liquid extracts. Now they stopped doing a lot of that at the expo because people were getting so fucked up. And the company Ecstasy, they herbal ecstasy, they got people so fucking high from their the combos that they were doing that the cops came in and the expo had to shut them down.
Yeah, because they were probably wondering what the fuck is in it. You know what I mean? Like, what is this herbal shit getting people fucked up? You're falling down outside. Yeah, that's scary.
But it's interesting with the kava because I was surprised. There was a rabbi that pushed it through and got worked with the FDA or someone. But I remember that night when it happened at that expo. I think it happened around that time of the expo, but it was just everyone was at parties drinking kava. It was just now you could have it. It was just this big
That's
deal.
So crazy that it was. I mean, I could see because it is a little bit mind altering.
Well, a lot of herbs, it comes down to politics, where they think it helps a culture, and they don't want to help racist politics, and then it comes down to money, and like stevia, there was the whole sugar cartel. C&H. Yeah. They were the ones who did not want that out. Someone wrote a book about how healthy it was, and the FDA went and raided their house and fucking took all their books. Yeah. Yeah. It's like it was a crazy herbal time. I mean, in Nevada, it was in the 80s and early 90s, it was a death penalty for cannabis. Like, you came in, I'd never wanted to come to Nevada, and I lived across the border in the desert, but I was like, fuck that. I don't want to go to fucking get killed or go to jail for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine that got caught with weed here. Must have been back around that time that he had to get a felony expunged because he came to Vegas with weed, and he just brought his personal with him.
Oh yeah.
It was crazy. Like, yeah, I remember that. You know, you still run into old school stoners, and they'll be like, bro, I remember you couldn't have a seed in Nevada. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's like, that's crazy, man. And California's always been a little bit more maybe liberal about it. You know what I mean? About weed. But yeah, I smoked a lot of weed. Man, it was weird, man, because I kind of wish that I grew up around more like traditional stoners, because the people that I grew up smoking weed with were the same ones that were like doing meth and all that other shit. They were like cholos that were like, yo, homie, like, let's roll a blunt. Like, you know, those guys. But it was so cool to watch like movies like Dazed and Confused and shit. I'd be like, man, I wish I grew up around those guys. Like, they just seemed cooler.
Yeah. No, I got lucky. I thought weed was always bad. I always thought alcohol was the one, because that was what family did, and you know, drugs were bad and cannabis. And then in high school I had some just some friends that were hippie kids, you know, and one of the hippie kids came from hippie parents, and his dad, who to this day I still love and hang out with, you know, and smoke weed with. But my buddy would steal his weed, and then, you know, I think 6th grade, way too young to smoke weed, didn't affect us, but we were still out in the playground trying to get high. And then it didn't come back into my life after that until I was in high school.
That's crazy.
I got arrested for being drunk and disorderly and shoplifting in high school, my junior year, and after that I was like, all right, I can't drink, and started smoking weed.
That's crazy.
It was great. I loved it. It saved me.
Almost everyone's story, well, a lot of people's story about their first time with weed or their first experiences or some of their first experience was stealing it from someone's parents. It's like, what the fuck was wrong with people's parents back then? They just didn't hide their weed very well. If I want to hide something from my kids now, like, they're not finding it. You know what I mean? It's like, but I remember my buddy Jimmy, the one that I smoked weed with, the 20-year anniversary thing. One of the first times I smoked weed was with him. And it's because he was like his stepdad, Sandy, which I love that guy. There's a documentary that never got released about my company because it went way political, like, on it. When they finally showed it to me, I was like, fuck no, this is nothing like I thought it was going to be. And so we canned it. But I got some clips from it. And one of it's from his dad talking about, like, because he beat cancer and stuff, but he attributes a lot of it to weed. But long story short is I remember stealing his weed back in the day, and him, like, later on, like years later, he said that he would blame Jimmy's mom because Jimmy's mom didn't smoke weed, and he would be like, see, I know you're fucking smoking weed because Jimmy doesn't know where the weed's at. And then later on finds out Jimmy was stealing the weed, and that he was like, his wife was like pissed off that she was getting blamed. She's like, I'd smoke pot with you if I wanted to. So it's kind of a funny story, like, later on in life. You know what I mean? Like, no, we were smoking your weed, Sandy, for sure.
Yeah. No, my stepson, I remember I got a call from my ex, and she's like, did you give Wade weed? I'm like, no, I didn't give him any weed. And she's like, well, is this? And I'm like, I don't think he took it from me. And she shows me this full mason jar packed with all the stuff that I had grown. I'm like, no, that's my weed.
Yeah.
He didn't take a nug either.
He took the whole jar?
He took a whole jar. Well, I was growing, so I had a bunch of it. But, you know, he just somehow.
Like, he's not gonna miss this ounce of weed.
Shower. Yeah, I was like, dude.
How old was he?
14.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was gonna say, if he's like 10, ran to school, a backpack. Look what I stole.
Yeah, no, he was in high school, but I just thought, that's, you know, it happens a lot.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, man. Like, I enjoy cannabis now again. Like, I have this newfound passion for it, like I said. But, you know, kava, like, you know, you mentioned, like, kava is really like a big part of my life now. I don't, believe it or not, I don't drink a lot of kava like I used to. When I first got sober, you know, I became a bad alcoholic.
Well, let's hear how you discovered what led up to discovering kava.
Oh yeah. Like, I've said this like 10 times already, but it's another interesting story. Is that I got drunk on November 18th, 2019, and November 23rd. I got these two dates. I mixed them up because there's kind of two relevant dates that were around that same time. So November 23rd, 2019, I was at a show from a band called In Flames at the Hard Rock, and I'm there in the VIP. I guess a lot of people have these not a lot of people have cool stories about the last night they drank. And my last night I drank with a band that I really liked, that I was a fan of, and that was with the guys from In Flames. I was pre-gaming kind of with those guys. And I met those guys obviously years before because of the whole promoting thing. So I was drinking. I was at a show. In Flames was on tour with a band called Red, and I'm in the VIP, and I'm drunk, drinking Jameson and shit. And my ex was like, fuck you, I'm out. You're fucked up again. And she even told me earlier that night, like when we left the house and I was already drunk, she's like, just don't drink anymore. But I was drinking. And so I leave there. I go to get my car in valet, and the guy wouldn't give me the fucking keys. And so I was like, no, you're gonna give me the keys. And so then he pushed me, or I don't even think he really pushed me. He just put his hand on me, like, get away from me, and I punched him.
Yeah.
And I didn't hit him very hard. I like kind of missed him because it's that drunk like noodle arm fucking punch. And so he wanted to give me the keys. I got kind of restrained, and I was like, I still remember, like, fuck you, I'm gonna call the cops. He's like, yeah, call the cops, whatever, you dumbass. And so I took off walking, and I kind of remember walking, but I don't remember going to Top Golf. You know, and of course the back street right there, like I think it's Koval, like it runs straight to Top Golf, right? Yeah. So I ended up at Top Golf that night, but don't fucking remember it. To this day, I don't remember it. Don't remember shit. And I'd been to Top Golf many a times. I ended up in my my house the next day in the guest room, and I could look down in my driveway, and I see that my car is not there, but my ex's car is there. She's in the other room, and I was like, all right. So I see on my phone, it asked me, do you want to tip your Uber driver? I'm like, fuck. I don't tip the Uber driver because I'm like, I didn't take an Uber. Yeah. I got home. She brought me home. You know what I mean? And so then I look in my account, and a pretty regular thing, you know, look in your account, see what you spent the night before. I saw 345. No, I saw multiple charges, but one charged for 345 at Top Golf. And then my Uber charged for like $21. And I go, when the fuck was I at Top Golf? So I said, oh. So I pull it together like normal hangover days, you know. I got to go, because I'm still partners at this dispensary out here at this point. So I go to, I'm on my way in, and I go, I need to go to Top Golf. Because it was bothering me. Did I really go to fucking Top Golf last night? Because I was in an Uber. Oh, by the way, and then my ex, I don't remember the whole conversation, but she was like, yeah, you fucking just stumbled in the middle of the night. And I was like, all right, maybe I was in an Uber. And so I go to Top Golf. I walk up the steps, if you've ever been to Top Golf. There's like a reception area right there. And I ask the girl there, I was like, hey, I don't know if I was here last night, but I got charges. She's like, well, and this was already kind of late in the afternoon. And so she's like, such and such was here last night. Let me see. She calls over. This little white girl, blonde girl, comes walking over. She's like, oh, hey, what's up? She's just like, thank God you got home last night. I was like, I was here? She's like, oh, yeah, my manager put you in an Uber last night because you were buying people drinks. You were loud. You were, like, throwing the golf balls. I'm like, fuck. And so they showed me leaving on into the Uber. They couldn't find the footage of me being there or whatever, but they showed me stumbling to the Uber, giving the dude a hug while I was getting in the car, just drunk shit. Like, man, people were probably looking at me like, man, this dude's fucked up. So I go to my shop, and I had a massage chair in my office. So I'm in the massage chair. This guy, Matt, that I'm going to see later tonight because he's my marketing guy at the Kava Bar now, but he was my marketing guy over here. He goes, man, you need to call this guy Jimmy, man, because I got sober, and he needs, and I was like, fuck, maybe I do. So I leave. I was not there very long because I was fucked. So I'm in the car, I'm sweating, and I remember calling Jimmy. Fool still has a fucking 4.5 years later, still has the same voicemail. He goes, hi, you've reached the personal and confidential voicemail of Jimmy Monahan. And I was like, hey, what's up? My name's Joe. I think I might have a drinking problem. He calls me back almost right away. I said, hey, man, my name's Joe. I met you through Maddie. I think I might have a drink problem. He's like, well, this is what he says. He's all, considering I'm the expert and you're probably not, like, you should come see me. So we find out. I'm like, who the fuck? This guy's an asshole. Okay. So he's like, meet me at this church. So in my mind, I'm not thinking that's a 6'2" guy with tattoos from his neck down. So I go, I'm going to go see Pastor Jimmy at the church. This ought to be fun. But I was just curious, like, what makes me an alcoholic? So I go, I meet Jimmy, 4 hours in this guy's office. 4 hours, no bullshit. I'm fucking crying the whole time. I'm, like, listening to him talk about, like, he's all, he pegged my ass right, like, spot fucking on. He never met me, didn't even know who I was. To this day, like, I still think they lied, and he called Matt and asked him about me. He goes, let me guess. You got some money, right? You're the yes man. You pick up the check. Everybody says yes to you. Nobody tells you shit, right? Yeah. You're life of the party. Everybody wants to be around you. Yep. And he goes, yeah, you're gonna kill yourself. It's gonna end bad for you. He's like, you know, I was out of shape, all this other shit. He's all, I don't sponsor people anymore. He's like, I'm a pastor of his church. I have Rise Consulting, which I consult other counselors on how to build their practices, but I'm gonna sponsor you, but not your traditional sponsorship. But you do need to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. And he's all, because my dad died of alcoholism, and he's a very successful guy. Because, you know, but I'm going to call you on your shit. That's what he told me. I'm going to call you on your shit. And I was like, all right. So I go to I got out of there about 6 o'clock. He said, there's a meeting at the Sahara Club, which is actually right here. He's all, there's a meeting at the Sahara Club, and you need to be there at 7:30. So I said, fuck, man, I don't really want to go to this meeting, but I just agreed to this guy who, for all I know, he called ahead.
Right.
I show up to meeting. I meet a lady walking up the stairs behind me that just drank hand sanitizer. So I'm like, why am I in this fucking meeting?
Right.
They say, you want to share? No, don't want to share. So I go to 90 meetings in 91 days. And I missed one day, and Jimmy said, where are you at? Because he used to check in on me. He made me call him at 12, 3, and 7 every day. And if I missed it, he'd call me. And I'd be like, hey, bro, it's really loud here. He's like, I don't give a shit. Just call me if I can't hear you. I'm like, fuck. So then I missed a meeting. He's all, where's your meeting going to be at? Because I had a business meeting. I said, the Rio at the old Borracho, whatever. And he goes, have you drank there before? I go, yeah, but I'm not drinking tonight. And so anyways, I'm in the middle of a fucking meeting. He comes walking in. I go, what the fuck is this guy doing here? First off, when I go into the church, I'm asking all these very conservative-looking people, like, I'm here to see Pastor Jimmy. Oh, go up the stairs. I go upstairs, and I see this dude walking up, fully sleeved up, big as shit, bald head, gauges, walking towards me. I'm like, holy shit. He's like, I'm Pastor Jimmy, what's up? And I was like, so this is the guy that's walking in and out to the restaurant, like, a couple days later, like, to tell me, like, I don't give a shit. You got to go to a meeting. You have a meeting at night? Go to meetings in the morning. Fuck, okay. So I go to 90 meetings. I'm meeting with him somewhat regularly for lunch. I go through this. I start, you know, taking account of shit. You know, I can't really say I'm an AA guy, but I start taking moral account. I start realizing, like, fuck, my life is not really that great. Like, you know, and I remember shortly, I wasn't religious or anything like that, but I remember I got kicked out of my house for being an asshole, and I had stayed at the Park MGM for like a week. And I'd rented a suite. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to smoke cigars, drink, have friends over. And I remember looking outside at the middle of the night because I couldn't get anybody to come hang out with me. And I'd smoking cigars, drinking whiskey. And I remember thinking to myself, looking at the T-Mobile Arena, I remember, like, you know, there was no suicidal thought there. But I remember thinking to myself, I understand why people kill themselves with a lot of money. Because it could be fucking lonely. And so that all came to the surface when I got sober. So the kava thing, I'm losing my shit at a certain point because I'm used to going out every night. We barely kept anything in the house to eat. My ex is still drinking. Like, you know what I mean? I'd come home from, like, work and shit, and she'd be drinking with her friends. So I'm, like, not in a good headspace. Right. So that's when I actually started working out. But then you can only work out so much during the day. Right. So I'm coming home to this shit. I'm drinking everything. I'm trying to get drunk off. I'm trying to feel something from anything, excessive amounts of coffee, anything to say that I didn't drink, right? Yeah. I even considered smoking weed again. So my ex is like, I watched a show called Love and Hip Hop, and they were drinking something called kava on that, and they said that it relaxes you. And I found a place in town that sells kava. So I look it up to make sure it's not alcohol, and it's not. So I said, let's go. They open at 4. I was there right before 4. I go in, and Jai, the guy that, you know, was working there, he's one of the owners. He sits down, explains to me kava, brings out what's called a tanoa. It's a big bowl, and he makes kava, and I drink it. It tastes like fucking mud water. I'm like, I'm never drink this again. But like 5 minutes later, I start feeling super relaxed. Yeah. And I knew, being an entrepreneur, I said, I'm going to do something with kava. Like, this is crazy. So I said, how come this doesn't taste better? And he goes, that's just how it tastes, bro. He's a Polynesian guy. I said, fuck no. I'm going to turn this into something. Do you have some of this root? Because he explains to me what it is. Yeah. He goes, yeah, I give you some. I said, sell me some. So me being a cannabis guy, I take it back to my extractor and I said, can you turn this into an extract so I can make this taste better? He's like, I turn anything back into an extract as long as it's a plant. Yeah. So I make a kava extract that we still use. Wow. So all my drinks over there. That's great. Like, I make everybody that go in there try traditional kava because I feel like it's a rite of passage. Yeah. But kava sodas, kava mocktails, kava refreshers, all that shit we make over there. So if you go in there and you look around, you think people are drinking cocktails, but none of them are cocktails. They're all kava mocktails. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? And so then we got into Kratom because, you know, Kratom was
it's helping people with opiates.
Helping with opiates. You know, I started meeting people that were asking about Kratom, and I was like kind of against it, you know. And then I met somebody. I was at a show in Mesa, Arizona. I was at a metal show there, and this guy was taking Kratom capsules, and I go, dude, isn't that shit bad for you? He goes, dude, I was on heroin until I started taking Kratom. He's all, now I have kids and I'm a heavy machine operator, and it's because of Kratom. So I started doing more homework. Yeah. Realized that the dangerous part about Kratom is the extract. You turn Kratom powder into an extract, it's very dangerous because it starts to, it fucks up your kidneys, it fucks up your lungs, believe it or not. It suppresses your appetite, gives you erectile dysfunction. It literally shuts your body down. Yeah. But the Kratom powder, if it's tested right and if it's the right, you know, if it's clean leaf, I should say, like it's not harmful. Like, you know, anything can be harmful in excess, right? But so then the funny story is, full circle, is I opened a place in Container Park. Well, it was my CBD store. I switched it to a kava bar because CBD is kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? It's like not really taking traction anymore. Yeah. I opened a good kava there, and I start throwing sober Saturdays there. I start doing shit because I'm a promoter at heart. You know, I start throwing these shit like DJ in there and everything. And then I throw my first sober as fuck Saturday, and I walk in, and there's this girl wearing Doc Martens, all black. Oh, wow. Like, who's the hot girl with the Docs? Like, you know what I mean? Oh, that's a girl from AA. I leave. I cancel my plans because I planned on just going in there, saying hi, and leaving that night because I was going to the gym. And not to name drop, but like I was going to the gym. My buddy Logan's the guitar player for Machine Head. So he was just in town just long enough to like work out a couple times with me, and he's a big dude. So I was like, man, I'm gonna go work out with Logan, but I fucking canceled because I wanted to know her. So I go in there, start talking to her, and she's like, yeah, you know, and this, you know, she's a cool chick wearing Docs, and I'm like, yeah, this is right up my alley, right? And then that night I'm giving her kava and everything like that, and 3 months later I married her. She's out here right now with me, you know what I mean? And the thing is, married. Oh, she's amazing. I've been with her almost 3 years now. But so good kava, the lease was up, and they were assholes at Container Park. They thought I was taking away the business from the bars because some nights my place was busier than the bars. So they didn't like that. So they were like, your lease is up and you're going to pay this much, whatever. And because of what you do, you need to move to another spot. And I was like, no, I'm already moving back to California because my wife's kids are out there and she's fighting a case to get them back primarily. And my business is out there. So my assistant moves into my house here. I move back to California. And I said, okay, cool. Let's put the kava bar thing on hold. Then we open a pop-up kava bar inside my buddy's art studio out there that I paint with every week and stuff. So we open a kava bar out there.
And that was at Palm Desert.
Palm Desert.
Yeah.
You know, so we opened the WLVS Den Kava. And during this time, I started like this whole wolves theme thing. I started a podcast called Raised by Wolves. I started, it was kind of a movement with a couple of musicians and Jimmy, like, you know, my sponsor. Yeah. And so then I find a place here off Charleston and Valley View by my first CBD store to open a kava place at. Get the plans approved and everything else. I call Ninth Island Kava, that
first place
I had kava, and I say, hey, I'm going to be opening a kava place here, and this is all stuff I've been doing with kava. And they said, well, we got a better idea. Why don't you just buy us out? So I was like, interesting. Yeah. So one of the partners that was there kind of stayed on. He, at some capacity, he's still doing stuff with us. But I slid in there and rethemed it, redid it. It's just a different place, different vibe. Everybody loves it. Turned everything in from Polynesian theme to more of like a coffee shop, like kind of club vibe, you know. Yeah. And then it's cool. We have an event tomorrow. I got some musicians that I know. I got my I got a DJ gonna be there. There's gonna be a shitload of people there. You know what I mean? We'll pack it out, and it's weird because people that come from out of town that know about that place will walk in there now and go, what the hell? Like, because they're used to going into a Polynesian reggae. They go in there and I'm listening to like The Cure, and like the bar is black, and they're like, what the hell? Where did I just come into?
Yeah,
you know,
you turn into a hip spot to go.
Yeah,
it's just a trendy spot.
Yeah, so it's like earlier, a girl comes in there and she's real timid, and you could tell, you know what I mean, she's new to kava, and I was like, why are you here? You know, why'd you come in? Like, and she's like, oh, I just quit drinking. I want to try kava. She's there for like a half hour. I'm like I'm not eavesdropping, but I hear her, and she's like, oh, you gotta come check out this place. This place is really cool, and that makes me feel good. You know what I mean? Because she just quit drinking. Now she might have found like a new spot. You know, and so kava's amazing. Like, we've helped with Raised by Wolves. We've helped over almost 150 people get into recovery. My stepbrother, he is out here with me right now. He's 36 days clean. And I got his ass working over at the kava bar right now, like cleaning the sidewalk for tomorrow, getting everything ready, staging the place, you know what I mean? And yeah, man, it's just a movement for me, man.
Well, yeah, and Raised by Wolves, that's what Jimmy, your sponsor, your tattooed pastor.
Jimmy's
so tell us
crazy.
a little bit about Raised by Wolves. What have you guys been?
So Raised by Wolves, and it's spelled kind of weird. It's RZDXWLVS. So it's like a, I got to spell everything weird. And so, Raised by Wolves was is weird because I went to breakfast one day with Ian Lovelace, who's a musician, a friend of mine. He was in town, and then I was at breakfast with Jimmy, and we had all kind of formed this little pack of sober buddies,
Yeah.
And Ian had this idea to start a wellness thing called Wolfpack Wellness that was kind of a alternative to AA, but kind of kratom based.
Yeah.
And Jimmy and I were already kind of thinking about Raised by Wolves because I had painted graffiti with a couple of sober graffiti writers fucking around, and that show Raised by Wolves that's on TV, I said that'd be a cool name for a crew. And let's just start a sober crew. But then those guys, shortly after that, started drinking and stuff again or whatever. So I always kind of had it in my mind, but spelled the right way. Yeah. But there's so many things spelled that way. So I'm a graffiti writer, you know what I mean? And so I like shorten everything. So I started something like Raised, RZD, Wolves, Raised by Wolves. You know what I mean? And so I put that together. I'm at breakfast, and Ian's like, dude, what about Wolfpack Wellness? I said, I just started this thing called Raised by Wolves, and I wrote it out. And they were like, that's fucking cool. Let's start that. So then it became like more of a club. And now there's all over the country. There's probably that like hashtag it in their recovery. They're just like very like part of like the Wolfpack. We hashtag Wolfpack, like WLFPK, Wolfpack. There's probably 100 people in other countries and everything like that where they're just like, yeah, we fuck with these guys. And we started a podcast called Raised by Wolves. It's got, 5,000 subscribers. It's got, it's cool, but it's not your typical recovery podcast because we promote like microdosing, cannabis in recovery, stuff like that, like earth-based alternatives. So it's like, it's very controversial.
Which is good because that's what's been helping everybody in recovery.
100%.
From kratom to mushrooms to all the
100%. It's very controversial. I'm not, depending on the meeting I go to here in town, because I was very vocal about kava and microdosing in my recovery. There's people that like kind of don't like me. Like there was a couple meetings I'd started going to, and it was like those whispers you kind of hear, and they're like, "Oh, this dude's here just promoting his kava bar," or there'd be like, "That dude's not even sober." He's like, I would say like, "Hey, Joe, alcoholic, this and that," and then I got my 2-year chip out here, and there was a guy, I don't remember his name, older white guy. And he told me, he's like, bro, you feel good about getting that chip? And I said, yeah, man, because I'm thinking he's asked me for a good reason. Right. He goes, dude, but you eat mushrooms. And I go, yeah, I microdose during recovery. He's like, you need to turn that chip back in. I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's crazy. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, I was not getting high microdosing. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's like, but
or blacking out.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, the other thing is that I tell my brother's going to 90 meetings, 90 days. I said, I believe that is good because you're going to meet like-minded people that are going to be there at 2:00 in the morning when you're going through your shit. But I can't say that I can't sponsor anybody technically because I didn't finish the 12 steps. Like, you know what I mean? And I believe in, my buddy Ian Lovelace is an ex-heroin addict, and he attributes, he had an episode on my podcast and he talks about this, high doses of THC oil to kicking heroin. Same thing with, who JC Coates is?
Yeah.
JC Coates he was my co-host on the podcast for the first 5 episodes.
Oh, okay,
and JC, he got off methadone because of cannabis. So it's it's really hard for me to hear that shit because we are going off of a fucking book that was written in the 50s when weed was the reefer madness and shit. You know what I mean? It's like gateway drug and everything. It's like, no, it's the exit drug, not the entry drug. It'll get you off of shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's very hard for me to subscribe to that shit.
I agree.
So when I go to meetings, man, it's funny because I like going to meetings. If I do go to meetings, I go to meetings when no one knows who I am because then if I tell a story, it's kind of a powerful story and it'll help people. But I tend to, if it's a new meeting, not bring up the kava and kratom and the weed too much unless I get to know that group because I'm like, they're just going to talk shit. You know what I mean? And so so I just leave it alone. My wife, man, she had a lot of people talking shit about her because they knew who I was. She was going to meeting every day when I met her. She's a recovering addict herself, but it's crazy because you would never notice. No, now she took to recovery really well. But she had people telling her that I had an ego. I was the wrong person. I was going to get her drinking kava and eating mushrooms, all this shit. And, fuck them. I got married and we're good.
And, if you're in recovery, you need to want to be in recovery.
Yep.
And, those little things, they might be triggering, but they're not going to send you back into full-blown alcoholic.
There's nobody blowing anybody in the alley for mushrooms and weed.
No.
I mean, and if they are, they got problems outside of recovery.
Right, exactly. Yeah, nobody. And cannabis is what you use when you're hungover the next day.
Exactly.
And mushrooms, after you have a big dose of mushrooms, you don't want to do mushrooms for a while.
Yeah, man.
And the microdosing, you're not even really feeling. It's just kind of giving you a little bit of a lift.
Yeah.
A little crisper life.
Yeah, there's a lot of very successful entrepreneurs that I'm glad are coming out now and talking about weed and mushrooms and stuff.
And that's what always upset me. I was 19 when I started becoming the activist for cannabis and getting people sick. And I knew stoners that wouldn't sign the petition. They're like, oh, dude, I don't want to be on a list, which I always thought was
oh
nice.
my God,
they
still talk about that list.
They still talk about that list shit.
Yeah.
And then and just the amount of people who were intelligent and business and savvy and all the higher up stuff, they would smoke weed, but they were so paranoid about being caught and somebody knowing it. And I was like, dude, you're a shining example of why people should, if you want to smoke weed, you will. You're not going to fail. It's not the way to slide down the slippery slope.
Yeah.
But they still didn't want it back in the 90s, man. Nobody wanted to really talk about it. It was hardcore unless you were the hardcore hippies.
Yeah, if you had a High Times magazine back then, you were definitely a troublemaker. You know what I mean? And now there's publications that are just openly out, like Vegas Cannabis Magazine. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. It's it's crazy, man. When I met my in-laws, who I call my parents, man, they were open weed smokers. I didn't know they were growing weed for a while, and it was crazy because they lived in a nice house. It was always clean. They always had their shit together. But then they'd disappear into the man cave that he had built on the house. And turn on fucking, Led Zeppelin or whatever, and they'd be in there watching TV, high, eating fucking ice cream. But they were very successful people, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it really made me, even back then, I remember thinking to myself, because, I don't know, I thought maybe being a stoner was bad or something. But meeting them, it, changed my perspective on, weed. Yeah. I'll never forget, them talking to me about drinking at one point. When I was younger, it's not right that you're drinking as much you're drinking, and me even back then judging them, going well, the fucking weed's worse. Years later, now I'm a big advocate for cannabis. I'm in the cannabis industry. Yeah. You know what I mean? And my pops is a very spiritual guy, hippie, at heart. And even in the corporate world, he never cut his hair. One of those guys, But he said that, so he only had a daughter, and that's my ex, that has no interest in cannabis whatsoever. She's an HR director. And he said that his beliefs, his spiritual beliefs, told him that he'd have a son to continue the family legacy. Wow. And I was uninterested all those years in weed. And when I came into the fold, he just calmly, I still remember the conversation in his chair at his table, was I knew somehow this would all come together the way it did. And it's crazy because now my son's in the industry. My son's 27. He could run my company probably, but he's just not a very friendly guy. I shouldn't say he's not friendly. He's actually really friendly, but he's an introvert. Yeah. So it's I don't know if he'd actually run my company. He could at this point though. He's one of the longest running employees there, and he handles our production and all that shit. And he always has an opinion. Last year, I got in an argument with him. He actually called my lawyer and told him that he wanted to run the company. And I was like, oh, really? And I was public then. I was like, you don't even get the shit that I got to go through every day. So go ahead. You can slide yourself into this shit anytime you want. I even told him at one point, you can even take my salary. I was like, fuck this, But what's weird to see, I think he's still got some years that he wants to be in this industry. I don't think he's having a kid anytime soon. I think he's paranoid to have kids or something. But so it's kind of cool that happened. You know what I mean? I was able to carry the torch a little bit.
Yeah. We had our daughter never had any interest in it. And her nickname's Nug. I was growing weed since she was a baby, and so she was always around it. And then, she got, and I was always educating with her and my stepson videos, the hemp industry, and here's, the real cannabis stories, and all, just trying to let them know, we've been lied to, and, all that stuff. So she was smart about it, but now she's going on 24 here in another month, and she works for a big distribution center up in Washington.
Oh, really?
And it's funny because she knows everything because she
Yeah.
was raised around it her whole life, but the whole time never wanted anything to do with it.
Kids sometimes they do the opposite.
Yeah,
we think.
exactly.
Because if they've been around stuff their whole life, they either show 100% interest or zero. Yeah. Like my son with going to like shows, for instance. I still to this day don't even know if he's ever been to a concert because he just like he was around it so much to where like he likes music, but he likes music that I don't care for too much, and then but it's not a big part of his life. And the same thing with graffiti. Like he's recently, believe it or not, in his like mid to late 20s gotten into graffiti a little bit, but growing up he was around what we would call like heavy hitters. Like he was around like big names in the graffiti world. They'd come to my house, we'd hang out, we'd plan these little trips and shit to paint different spots, and he had no interest, man. I'd be like, you want to learn like how to do letters or something? But a lot of his friends, I have a lot of tattoos from his friends not only getting into graffiti, but then going on and tattooing later. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so it's crazy, man. But but then, yeah, it's crazy how that works. And then some kids just dive into it. They're teach me everything. My
stepson, who I helped raise since he was 2, he was always around it too. He got into film school into high school. There was a program they had for an arts high school that was art based, and he applied to the film school. I helped him make it was a skateboarding movie video he made, and it was freaking awesome. And after he got accepted, I was so proud of him. Yeah, because I went to UCLA to do film. And that was what I thought my future was going to be. And so when he got into film, I was just so happy. And I remember he was over at the house. He was living with his mom. His sister was living with me. And I smoked weed in front of my kids. I had no problem with that. So I went and go smoke some weed. And I was just after I'm like, I'm so proud of you. And he was 14, and we go in the room and he follows me, and I'm like, are you ready? You want to try? And he's like, yeah, I think I'm ready.
To smoke weed?
Yeah. So
that's a crazy story.
And then I said, all right, but smoke it with me only. And here's what we're going to do. And so we did yoga. We watched some music videos. We looked at art. We went for a walk, and then we ended up watching a movie.
He'll never forget
this is how you do cannabis.
Yeah, he'll never forget that though. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a crazy experience. That's crazy. Yeah, most people that's not how they get introduced to weed, man. That's crazy. How did you start writing for like the Vegas Cannabis magazine?
So I've always been a writer, but I've never really taken it much further than all my journals and notepads, and my wife we started our cannabis company. We Giggle Therapeutics. We started Sugar. Let's see. I was working in the fashion industry for over a decade, and she was a physical trainer, yoga trainer, all that. And there was a local magazine called Irie Times. It was like a newspaper all about cannabis. Young guy started it up, and we just started Giggle Therapeutics. Nobody really knew that we were behind Giggle Therapeutics. And he said, listen, he told Sugar, I'd love to have a women's perspective on the cannabis industry. And she's like, great. She's like, well, my husband's a writer too. He's like, great. You guys write for me, and I'll give you free ads. I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
And so that's how I started Stoned History. So we had our Giggle button. I'm like, if I'm going to write an article on something, I want it to tie into my product so I can push my product. And so I would find recipes that didn't have an actual origin story, and I would create the origin story, and then I would add the Giggle butter and tell you, like, now you can infuse and make it your own. And then sometimes eventually when I started writing for Dope Magazine, and Dope Magazine was one of those things that just kind of came across. They did a photo shoot with us for Giggle Therapeutics that were featured in their magazine. And I told them, I said, hey, I'm friends with David Bronner from the Bronner's Magic Hemp Soap. And David's been a huge drug activist for a long time. Big into, he fought the government and the Bush administration in Ashcroft when they seized hemp seeds across the border in Canada because some military guy said he tested positive for THC, and he was like, oh, because I ate a hemp brownie or some shit. And so like, oh, hemp seeds, seize them. And his family was using hemp oil in their soap. And, he believed in it. He had spent a couple of years after he graduated high school in Amsterdam, living in Amsterdam, fell in love with all the psychedelics and all that. So he came back to America. I had met him through the natural products. Him and I bonded through the whole drug war, fighting the drug war. And then he went on to fight DEA. And then he locked himself in a cage. He was doing all this great stuff. And so I told the photographer for Dope Magazine, Ashley Castro, I believe. And I told her, said, you guys should really look into getting David Bronner in your magazine. It'll give you guys clout, because that guy's a fucking badass when it comes to the drug war. Crazy fucking Burning Man motherfucker, but a badass activist. And so they said, okay, great. And then a couple months later, they reached out to me and said, hey, he's not responding to us. Can you help us get a hold of him? And I said, I'll write the article. I'll help you get a hold of him, but I'll write the article. And so that was it. And then they loved that. They loved the article. And so I'd already had the Stoned History. I hadn't called it Stoned History at that time, but I'd already had those articles that I was writing for Ivory Times. And so I just said, look, let me start submitting. And I was pitching stuff, and then they liked my stuff so much, they started giving me, I was getting a couple of articles to write about a month. And then I had my own ongoing stuff that I was doing. And then I came out here, and right after I came out to Las Vegas, met Steph and Bill, crazy fucking wild
crazy
Bill,
yeah.
And I was still doing Dope. Dope Magazine was distributing the magazines on Vegas Cannabis's metal bars, or their metal stands.
I've heard this story from Bill.
Yeah, Bill was like, he was coming to me like, you need to fucking stop, dude. I'm like, dude, I'm just a writer. I'm a journalist, dude. I don't distribute it. I'm not I don't handle any of that. But I would call my editor, tell her. And he'd make videos. He'd steal the magazines. Like, these are all going to be at my house if you want to come pick them up.
Fool's fucking crazy. Taking dabs and Denny's.
Yeah,
and
that was, That's Wild Bill.
I'd hung out with him. I'd distribute magazines a few times when hanging out in the car, and I'd be these fools driving over islands and shit to get to
I had to stop work. I was doing that with him too, and he was just, he's wild. He's
a wild guy.
Yeah, but so Dope Magazine, right at that time, the two founders decided to sell it, and they sold it to High Times.
Yeah, that's where it went.
And High Times liquidated the shit out of it. And I knew instantly when my editor friended me on Facebook. I was like, and I'd been writing for the magazine for years, and I'm like, wait, you've never reached out on a friend level, and I'm like, something's up, something's fucking up. And so I started finding out. I'm like, yep, they got bought, which they said, oh, nothing's gonna change.
Yeah, it always.
Yeah, it all fucking changed. It all changed. And at that point, I think I wrote a couple articles for High Times, but it was liquidated. They had the High Times staff running Dope Magazine. I think Dope Magazine might still be out. There's a website's up. It was down for a while. I don't know. But anyways, at that point, I was like, all right, I'm done. All of my editors left. All the writers were leaving. I'm like, they're not going to contact me much more.
Yeah.
And then I was getting paid less and less and less and less. And then there was SEO that came out, and I knew AI was right behind that, because they're like, here's a 300. It was like, we got you 2,000 words, and they got 1,000. Now 500. Now 300 words, and here's 100 of the words we want you to use. I'm like, well, I'm not writing anymore. You took out all the creative aspect of it. I'm just regurgitating.
Yeah. And then AI just fills in the blanks.
Yeah. And so at that time, right around there, Steph said, hey, do you want to review some products for us? And I was like, yeah, sure. So started that, and then she would throw me an interview once in a while, and I'd pitch stuff to her, and do stuff with that.
The magazine's cool. I'm glad that she's still running it.
Yeah, and she's definitely the soul behind it all, for sure.
Oh, 100%. We've talked for 2 years about launching this in California, that it would be amazing for me, because we spend so much money on marketing materials, that it would be something that I could hand to all of our customers and all of our stores and everything like that. A magazine is much better than a flyer.
Oh yeah, totally.
And so I think we're gonna move forward with that.
Yeah, that's a good call. Those were when we first moved out here, I was covering NorCal for Dope Magazine, Southern Cal for Dope Magazine, and Las Vegas for Dope Magazine. So I was like kicking ass with all my stories, and then when that went dry, I was so glad that Steph wanted something, because cool. I love writing, and interviewing and all that shit. And so I was really able to, with Dope, I was able to do music and culture and activism, and I was, all those things I was really big into still to this day. In fact, I tell Steph, like, a lot of stuff now, I'm like, let younger writers come in. you know, because we don't get paid a whole heck of a lot, if anything. And so I'm like, you know, let other people try, unless it's specific. And so I have my column there, reading lit. You know, stony book suggestions for reading freaks.
Nice.
And then I review products. Occasionally I'll do something on politics. I got a piece I'm working on right now about unionizing cannabis. And then Steph's like, I think you should interview this person, and friends, you know, I've done her friends and stuff like yourself.
Oh, cool.
And I love that. You know, I love I've gotten to the point where I've kind of disliked the whole cannabis industry as far as who's involved in it.
Oh yeah.
You know, the douchey hedge fund motherfuckers that came in and took it over, and it just
there's a lot of OG changed. There's a lot of OG operators, like, at least that I work with. You're starting to see a lot of the what you would call like the chads. You're starting to see a lot of those guys. They're still there, but you're starting to see a lot of those guys not really be there as much. The guys that I currently do business with, a lot of the guys I do business with, it's the same vibe. You walk in there now and it's like there's art in there, there's music going. It's like chill. And there's 2 distros I do a lot of business with in LA, and we have our own distro, and then there's 2 we do business with where the vibes are very similar. It's a privately owned place. There's a couple owners, like, you know what I mean? There might be some investors behind the scenes that I don't know about, but it's super cool. When I consult, because consulting's become like a really big thing for me in the cannabis industry, like I purposely, I won't do consulting for, I mean, I guess if the money is right, I will, because I'll take a Chad's money. You know what I mean? But the thing is that, like, I'm really empowering these, like, smaller operators. Like, there's a couple of people that probably will even listen to this that I consult for that, you know, they were like, you know what, we didn't think we'd be in the industry anymore, but then now you're giving us the opportunity because you're licensed. Because I'm helping a lot of unlicensed people get into the fold with us, but instead of there being some like huge fee to produce in our place and do all this shit or run off our license, no, we're bringing them in, we're helping them establish their brand, and we're helping that shit thrive. We're taking care of a lot of, because we have a staff of accountants, and we have a staff of creative, and we have a staff of all that. We're saying, like, look, for you to start that, to compete in this climate, you're going to need all that, but we have it. So why don't you just come in, pay us a consulting fee, and let us a co-op, a true co-op. And so we have a consulting company called Weed Biz. It's WEEDBIZZ, and it's a fully integrated, like, we can help anything. We can help an extractor. We can help the mom and pop. You know, we can do whatever. And I base the consulting fee off what I think the company is going to do, not off what they can pay me necessarily, like, right up front. So I got consulting agreements right now where it's like I just own a little bit of equity on a company that I'm not making anything on, but I believe enough in it that I'm going to help them. And then I got other companies where they're paying me $5-10 grand a month because they're already very established, but there's some key elements of their business that's lagging, so I'm helping with that. So, you know what I mean? So it is really like the co-op model again that we're trying to take it back to, you know?
And that's admirable, and I wish there was more people like that doing it throughout, you know?
And then I still run into Chads and shit that are like, why aren't you charging 10 grand a month for this? Why aren't you doing this? And it's like, no, fuckers. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not doing that.
The ones that pissed me off lately are the companies that are owned by Republicans who fought the industry for so long, and then those companies are trying to make it so that states that are legal, they buy up the licenses, and they don't want the states giving out more licenses. They want to monopolize it, and that just fucking drives me nuts. Like, I want to crush that as best I can.
Oh, 100%. The funny thing is, man, is that depending on the day, like, I consider myself pretty conservative, but then there'll be those days where I'm sitting in a room full of other people that I feel they're conservative, and I'm just like, fuck, I hate these guys. So it's like I feel
the same way about progressives sometimes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like, I think my friend told me the other day, he goes, you're not a Republican. You're a Democrat with common sense. And I was like, okay, maybe that's what I am. You know what I mean? Because I don't vote. You know what I mean? So, and I know that's shitty, especially in our industry. Everyone's like, dude, you don't vote. You should vote for this. I don't vote. But the thing is that, you know, I feel that, you know what I mean? Like, in my life, I'm more conservative, but my morals are more liberal. Like, I don't know if that even makes sense. You know what I mean? Where I want the small guy to win. I'm for the people. You know what I mean? At the same time, but I don't like giving if I work my ass off to get something, I also don't like giving it away. But my time to help you, like, it's, what is it? Somebody said the other day, I was on another business podcast, and they said, it's about you're giving people a hand up, not a handout. And I was like, okay, that's better explanation. Like, I'm going to show you, like, look, I've made this out of my life. I will teach you this, but I'm not fucking cutting you a check.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So it's like, you know, like that. So I guess I don't know. So I don't know where these days. I don't know where fuck I fall. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, counselor.
A counselor, yeah, exactly. Yeah, man. But you know, who knows, man. But you know, I was excited. Like the funny thing is you're like, hey man, we need to get you on the podcast, and I agree to be on a lot of podcasts that I never end up on because it never gets back around. Yeah. And I was like, let me check this out because I was like, what kind of podcast am I gonna be on at a bookstore? But I like old books. It's funny because you got a lot of stuff in here that I know that I don't want to. I can't be a hoarder, man. The thing is I'll just buy shit because I like it, and I see all these like old romance novels and the nostalgic brown pages of them like make me go like, man, you know, I should buy some of these, you know, just because they're cool. And then like some of the magazines, like the old Juxtapose and stuff like that. And then you know, who was it? What's his name again? He was in Quiet Riot that was on your show.
Oh, Kelly Gardner.
Kelly.
Yeah.
He mentioned Star Magazine.
Yeah.
Dude, I have some old Star magazines. Dude, I'm gonna have. You still talk to him? Is he still?
Yeah.
I didn't.
Kelly,
yeah, Kelly. I know who. I knew who he was by.
Fucking great, cool guy.
Yeah,
man.
and no, I didn't know who he was until I'm quite right. So here's funny story. Hopefully he listens to this. I was in a graffiti crew for a long time called QR, Quiet Riot. It was named after the band. Nice. And it was, but I just liked the name because it's quiet. When you're a graffiti writer, you're quiet, and it's a riot. So we named our crew Quiet Riot.
I like it.
And so I didn't know who he was. And then like I was Googling Quiet Riot something, and it said original guitar player plays with Quiet Riot for the first time in 30 years. I go, they had a different guitar player, and I knew he was, and that was like a couple of years ago. Yeah. And then when I saw that he was on your podcast, I was like, oh shit. I don't know anything about this guy. Let me jump on there and listen to this. And that was the first episode I listened to. So I was like, man, maybe one of these days I'm going to tell him about that. Because I got old school pictures of me like painting Quiet Riot on things and stuff. And so that was pretty cool.
He loves art too. It was funny, you know, during that interview, I read, he had 2 books, and I was reading as much as I could through it before the interview. And I skipped over some of the Quiet Riot years to find out other stuff about him. Because I'm like, I think I was in 6th grade or 7th grade when Girls Rock Your Boys came out, you know, and I brought that up, and he's like, I was already out of the band, and he was best friends with Randy Rhoads, and I only thought Randy Rhoads was with Ozzy Osbourne. I had no idea Randy was with Quiet Riot, so I was like schooled, and I was the first time in an interview I felt silly. I was like, oh my god, I didn't know what I was talking about.
Hey, you played it off well. You know, I mean, Randy Rhoads is buried in San Bernardino.
Really?
His shrine thing, and then when Ozfest would go through San Bernardino, Ozzy would go visit him every time. Nice. I would hear it. You'd see it sometimes on the news or hear it on the radio station. Hey, Ozzy was at Randy's thing or whatever. And so it's one of a few things that's actually cool about being in downtown San Bernardino is that the you know, I don't know why he's even buried there. Maybe he's from there or something. I don't know, but like he's got it's like a thing, and it's crazy because it's constantly got graffiti on it. Because people, you know what I mean? And so it's like
Jim Morrison's grave.
Jim Morrison, Dimebag, like you know, there's some of those guys that they gotta like almost like put a damn security guard on there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And your fan base continues to grow even after you're dead.
Oh, I know.
Parents, kids, brothers, uncles, sisters, you know, everybody who's in those bands shares it with the younger crowd, and it just keeps going.
Yeah, it is crazy, but yeah, man, that's crazy, man. Like history, man. You know what I mean? Just like, man. It's crazy because I became a fan of Quiet Riot as an adult, even though I named a graffiti crew after the band. It's weird how, like, I was listening to Fleetwood Mac today, and I was telling my stepbrother, I said, we were listening to it, I was cleaning the Kava bar, I was like, man, I remember when your mom, is my stepmom, would listen to Fleetwood Mac. It's fucking garbage when I was growing up, and now I'm listening to Fleetwood Mac, you know what I mean? It's like funny how
I used to say that about smooth jazz.
I love smooth jazz.
And then now and I have to look classical smooth jazz stuff that doesn't like get me too. You know, I hate driving. I hate cars. I'm not a fan of it at all, and so I just get road ragey. Just in my body, I feel it. So smooth jazz.
I like smooth jazz.
I mean, I used to listen to nothing but punk and thrash, and now it's like
when you're older.
You gotta stay calm.
When you're older, your
nervous system can't handle it as much.
Yeah, you gotta stay calm. Hold on, I'm not trying to be rude.
No, do it.
I was noticing.
Let's see. What time do we have?
Oh shit, man. Yeah, man, I could talk all night, man. It's completely up to you. But I just realized I looked over and I was like, oh, hold on, my wife had texted me. It's probably the one person I probably should message back.
Well, Shug, what time are we on?
How long?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, what time? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, man.
Who you listening to now, music wise?
Dude, I'm like all over the place, man. So I actually recently have it's crazy. Like I know this is gonna sound kind of crazy, maybe a little weird. There's a band called Fame on Fire. Have you know who they are? I know it's weird. I'm even saying this. Maybe I shouldn't admit this. Fame on Fire is a band that takes like pop songs and turn them into like hardcore songs.
That's great.
I listen to them, but I like a lot of New York hardcore too.
Okay.
I'm friends with like Hoya from Madball, so I listen to a lot of Madball or fucking like Terror, bands like that. And then I like 9 Inch Nails, like the cliche bands like that. But then I like Sick Puppy, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then I like underground hip hop too, though. So I like Sage Francis, shit like that. Sage Francis, Atmosphere, Brother Ali. So they're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
And then when I'm driving, maybe it's my version of the smooth jazz, is that I like coffee house like lo-fi music.
All right, yeah.
In the car. I'm just like chilling, you know what I mean? Like listening to that. And then I don't know, man. Like it's funny because I go through these phases where I'm like really, really back in the metal again. Like I'm going to shows and everything. And then recently it's podcasts, man. I listen to a lot of fucking podcasts. I listen to Dropping Bombs. It's Brad Lee's podcast, who's out here. I'm going to be on his podcast soon. It's a entrepreneurial podcast. I listen to the Digital Social Hour, which is a guy I know, Sean Kelly, out here. Kind of interviews a bunch of people. Nice. You know what I mean? So I literally like put my podcast that's in my library in Apple, and I hit shuffle and whatever episode, and then I have to listen to, because yours is on there now too, is that whatever episode is, it takes me a few minutes to figure out, oh shit, I've already listened, so I'll hit shuffle again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's on long car rides.
Oh yeah.
And I wish I had more time to listen to more shit, but dude, the car's like my office now. I'm constantly like on my phone in the car, unfortunately. What I mean? But you know what I mean? And then I want to get back to reading more. I know that's like so stupid, like to some people.
I own a bookstore and I need to get back to reading. Like it's you get caught up with things and then you just get so exhausted by the end, And when you're an entrepreneur, you're working for yourself, and when you work for yourself, you're working nonstop.
Yeah, man. Sometimes like it's a curse, man.
Yeah.
Like I don't talk anybody out of starting their own business, but I definitely warn them of the dangers of like when it starts to really take hold. You know what I mean? I'm like, there's something to be said about clocking out at the end of the day and leaving that shit for tomorrow. There's something to be said about that.
Well, and I always worked for, pretty much, my whole life, small mom and pop or entrepreneur startups. And I made millions of dollars for a lot of people. And I finally was like, man, I need to do that for myself.
Why did you guys start this place?
So we came out here. So we closed our cannabis company, Giggle Therapeutics. And we wanted to move to a place. We had it on hold for the first half of the year, and we had investors who were ready to invest, and then they wanted to do cannabis too. Sugar my wife is also a journalist. She's a photojournalist, and she was doing that before I started writing for magazines. She was a snowboard journalist, and so we're like, okay, we need to find a place. We were writing for Dope magazine. We need to find a place somewhere on the West where cannabis is legal and cheap, so that we can fly to go see our daughter, who had just graduated and moved to Washington. So we're like, all right, where's that going to be? I had a cousin out here. We were coming out here. They had just opened up cannabis full bore rec. They were the first to do, I believe, adult use. Or after Colorado, something like that.
I think it was.
California hadn't done it yet. And so we're like, okay, well, let's we can fly cheap. We'll come out there. I was going to go into my writing retreat. Sugar set up a LinkedIn, and like within a month, she got hired to run marketing for a cannabis company out here. And so, like, great, this will be it. I had been collecting books and art for years, and so I'd flip some stuff on eBay once in a while. And then the cannabis company that she worked for, we're a hedge fund out of Canada, a bunch of young guys, and they wanted to throw a party at one of the hotels on the Strip. And Sugar said, that's illegal. And they said, do it anyways. And they did, and they got caught, and they lost their license. So that was, I think, 6-7 months after we moved out here. She stayed with the company for I think a half a year while they were moving shit and doing all the court stuff. And then they finally sold off their license. So then we're like, well, what are we going to do now? I started selling more books because I was like, we need to get more money coming in. And then High Times bought Dope. And so like my steady income from them disappeared. And so I said, well, let's build a website and we'll sell books. And we wanted to publish my first book and publish more of my stuff and other people's stuff. Like, let's become a publishing house, set up that, started selling books on our website. We were at the Las Vegas Book Festival, and it was right before COVID. And this guy comes up, flips through my book, and he's like, man, this is awesome. You're great. And took my card, sent me an email out of the blue one day and said, man, I really enjoyed your poetry book. Can I take you to coffee? I was like, sure. He's like, I just want to talk. And he was an older gentleman, a little bit, 10 years older than us, I believe. Maybe even a little bit older than that, but hip, cool guy. And I was like, yeah, sure. So he takes me to this coffee shop here in New Orleans Square called Fort Bedlam. He's like, it's like the guys are from Seattle and it's super hip and cool. And he's a hip guy, you know, he dresses super cool. He was a lead singer of a band. Actually, he's opening up, or he's doing the last night at Fat Cat, the jazz blues club here. The Red Dwarf owners just opened a jazz and blues club. And his band's like jazzy bluesy. He plays a harmonica. He's just a super cool hip old guy, older guy. And so we're having coffee, and we're talking about our website and books and what we sell and what kind of books and all that. And he said, you know, I'm friends with the owner of this building. His name's Ron, and he wants a bookstore in this spot. So we walk down to this spot, and I look at it. I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to do a brick and mortar. You know, I mean, I've been enough business wholesalers to brick and mortar retailers, and like that's a tough gig.
Yeah.
But he was very convincing. Ron's like, I want you guys. It's super cool. I like what your style is, and that's what I want. He went to Burning Man. It changed his life. He took his family there, and he's like, I want art, and queer, and weird, and freaky, and music, and cool shit. You guys be perfect. So we were like, all right, well, maybe this is. And we had our big contract with a cannabis company where we were doing all of the content and some of their marketing stuff. The guy who hired us, the owners were in Colorado. The guy who hired us, super cool cat, got in a car accident, and he ended up leaving the company. And so we got an email one day from their CFO saying, hey, you need to turn over all your passwords. And we said, okay, but you need to buy us out. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, the contract. And he's like, what contract?
Yeah.
And so like, well, the contract where you have people sign
Yeah.
so they don't fuck us.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they bought us out. And so we had this little bit of money, and we're like, all right, well, what are we going to do? This situation showed up. We're like, transition time, I guess. We'll pivot, and we'll go into a brick and mortar bookstore. So the day we came to sign our lease here, the owner was in the hospital, and his daughter, who was working with us, said, oh, my dad just got diagnosed with stomach cancer. Within that month, before we even moved in here, he passed.
Holy shit.
So his whole dream of art, queer, cool vibe here fucking died with him. And his kids just walked, didn't give a shit. And I think they stayed around for a little bit. Didn't help, didn't do anything, didn't bring anybody in. He was like, I'm bringing these people in, this stuff, and this is going to happen. And it just went flat. But here we are. We had a 3-year lease, so we're like, we'll make it happen however we have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of after that too. Outside of journalism, Sugar was pretty much done with cannabis. She had been for a while. She never really smoked. The first time she smoked was with me, and throughout our company, when we had our company in California, it was still a gray market. And we had seen some hardcore shit go down. We saw some people we knew got raided, and not by cops.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of greedy and backstabbing people that were pretty much trying to be your friends, but not. You see a lot of the dark side of the industry. And Sugar was not ready for any of that shit. It was very hardcore for her, and so. By the time this last cannabis company and we ended our contract with them, she was like, "Look, I think I'm done. It's just been exhausting." And for me, it was my passion my whole life.
Yeah.
But you don't want your partner to struggle and like be doing something they hate just because you like it. Mm-hmm. We both still liked doing journalism stuff, so we dabbled in a little bit of that still. And she she builds websites and does marketing. So she's like, let's do the bookstore. And
nice.
We'll just expand it. And then we started publishing even more. So we started picking up writers and artists that we started publishing their stuff.
Oh hell yeah!
And that was going to be our main focus. the bookstore was just going to be like a little side thing where we showcase books.
Yeah.
But because of everything that happened with the business, not the New Orleans Square not blowing up like we were told it was going to, we just couldn't spend as much money as we wanted to on publishing. So we really had to cut back. And then COVID had just ended too, right when we opened up this place. And there was a supply shortage apparently for paper. So we had contracts set up to work with all these writers right before that we were going to publish these writers before we had the bookstore. And so we go to our print. That was the end of the year. We got all these contracts. We find all our writers and artists we're going to work with. We go to our printer and we're just like, hey, here's what we want. And he's like, well, you can't get this paper anymore. It's super expensive if you want this paper. This paper's at this price for 10 days. You got to order it now. And we're not even sure we can get more.
Yeah.
And so we just like had to cancel contracts and pull back and be like, hey, we can't do this. And so we started buying broken pallets of paper on our own and auction paper and just whatever we could find, bits and pieces, and putting together stuff that way. And now we've been able to, the supply is not as bad as it was supposedly, if it ever was bad.
Yeah,
and we're
it's like toilet paper.
Yeah. And so now we're able to expand a little bit more. This year we'll be publishing more books that we had planned for the last year.
That's cool.
So we're stoked on that for sure. But yeah, it was not really. It's one of those things. It's not necessarily something we were planning on doing other than the website, and I was just focusing on writing, and then I would just coming to Vegas, you got all the thrift stores and stuff. People die, people come and go, so there's a lot of cool shit that ends up in thrift shops. And so and we would just do that for fun. We just cruise around, and my mom had given us when we moved out here some gold jewelry. She's like, go to a pawn store and go have a date night. And so we did that, and then we went to a casino, and we were there for 15 minutes, if that. Had 2 drinks and lost $40, and I was like, let's go to thrift shopping instead.
Yeah.
And so that was like we started that and finding more books. And then we realized there's some outlets that had like a huge book supply at the time. We just like pick those up and flip them on the website.
Yeah.
And then I started refurbishing books and fixing them up, and so that was kind of like a little side gig, which I do a bunch now. In fact, I got a 1700 book I'm working on right now. It's a huge project. Yeah, Scott. It's all leather. It's cool. So yeah, that's kind of how
that's really cool.
It all ended up where we're at this point.
That's cool. Yeah, it's cool. It's definitely a cool shop for sure. Like I'll have to bring my wife in here. She'll like this place for sure. Like this will be cool.
So what are you doing now? This you're here for the weekend. I didn't find out what you were all here for.
I'm here. I'm here for. There's a thing tomorrow night called Sober AF Saturday. It's technically the same event that I met my wife at years ago.
Someone else running it though.
Well, we're running it at the Kava Bar, and so I have a DJ. This DJ Charles King is he's going to be DJing, and then I have my buddy Ian Lovelace, my partner with Raised by Wolves. He's playing. He's bringing his guitar and mic and everything, and then we're going to have a local MC that was also on my podcast, and a friend of mine, Snap Murphy. He's a rapper. He's just sick as hell. He's sober dude too, and like he's gonna be there. So it's gonna be this whole collage of like whatever, you know what I mean? Tomorrow night, it's just gonna be not an open mic, but it's gonna be those guys are all friends. So it's gonna be this cool little. I think they're gonna do some cool shit there, and it's at WLVS Den Kava, like our spot.
Yeah, what's the address there?
It's 5447 South Rainbow.
Nice, cool.
It's behind like the. Well, it was a gyro place. Now it's a Mexican food restaurant. It's across the street from the hospital.
Oh,
right there. Yeah. And so, it's cool. We're doing stuff there all the time. Like,
you're saying like you got games, you do karaoke, you do comedy, you got open mic.
There's a stage there, and it's constantly open night. We even put it's a small one, so it's just for fun. But we even put a damn basketball hoop inside there, because people, we got chess in there, we got cornhole, we got sketchbooks, we got. Magazines like there. We got, Jenga. It's just a bunch of cool shit.
Well, and I'm hoping you guys can come down to here, New Orleans Square, where the coffee shop was. They had a stage. They had the kitchen set up, and they were ready to go. And
I'm going to be checking on that a lot because we've been looking for another spot. And when you sent me the information on that, I sent somebody over here quick. We called. That guy is not there anymore. The guy that
David's not?
He's not there anymore.
That's how much they tell us.
Yeah, but he's not there anymore. But we talked to somebody. They said they're not ready to rent it yet. So they took our information, but we're gonna follow up a lot on
Yeah, I
it.
would
It's a
hound
perfect spot. My buddy owns a shop right across the street. It's a graffiti shop actually called the Machine Studio.
Yeah, that's right.
Right across the big ass yellow letters across the street on Sahara by the Chinese restaurant called Machine Studio.
Yeah.
And he was even telling me this would be a cool area before I even came over here. But I'd never come out. Like, I came over here to like play pool one time, and I thought the green door was fucking dispensary. And they were like, "No, bro, that's." And I was like, "Oh, okay, my bad." Like, you know what I mean? Because I was
the Green
like,
Door's a swingers club here in Las Vegas.
yeah. But when I heard it, I come from California. That's the name, and that's what a California dispensary would look like. So I just assumed,
Right,
and then someone told me like, "No, that's not." You know what I mean? And so I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." You know what I mean? Because I remember coming out here to Vegas, I don't know, years ago, and playing pool right over here.
Yeah.
Like my buddy he was a big pool guy.
Yeah,
I think
they had a big pool hall here.
Yeah, and it's obviously not there anymore, right? Yeah. But yeah, so hopefully this would be cool. This is perfect. This is Kava. So we're big in the recovery community, and there's a bunch of addiction stuff going on here. And then Ian Lovelace, oddly enough, the musician I mentioned multiple times here, records music at a studio like right upstairs, right over here. You know what I mean? He does some stuff with John Widowmaker, another friend of ours. And so it's kind of just crazy.
Well, let's hope so. We could definitely use it, and I'd love to have you guys here for sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool, man. But yeah, I mean, other than that, man, I got a little bit of work to do tonight to stage for that tomorrow. I'll probably, depending on this damn signage shit, I might try to sleep in a little bit tomorrow because it's gonna be a late night tomorrow night, and then that's what I'm doing. Then I'll go home. But but I still have a house here in Vegas. My ex-wife, which is sort of my accountant for me now, she lives here, and then I think I might have just found another house here because I want to spend more time here. I'm trying to convince my wife to move back here like in 2025. Because I think that I've convinced her ex, who would kill it with what he does out here. He's a handyman, but he's a really good handyman. I was like, dude, in Vegas, you'd kill it. So I'm trying to because if I can get them both to agree to move back, then there's no more of the splitting kid thing. And so I want to be back out here because I traveled for 7 years back and forth to California running my cannabis company. I just had a guy that was kind of running point on everything out there. But I feel like Vegas is my home, and I feel like I still visit in California, even though I'm from California. When I'm here, I just know the streets. I just love it here. I love Vegas, and I've never gambled ever gambled, and so I just love Vegas. You know what I mean?
It's funny because I literally grew up in the Mojave, just across the border, and the whole death penalty thing and the harsh laws on cannabis was always fearful. But I never thought, I was never a gambler. I never had money that I could just get rid of.
No shit.
But and then my wife was the same. Never thought we'd come out, and then we moved here, and we freaking love Vegas, man.
Vegas is great.
It's the biggest small town ever.
It is, and, everybody seems to know each other if you're somehow connected to that person.
Some industry or some cool shit.
Yeah, I love Vegas, man, for sure.
And it's funny because people are always like, Vegas is terrible. And we always laugh like, we used to think that too, but it's because all you know of Vegas is the Strip.
Yeah,
and there's
exactly
tons of culture here. People come from all over to make it in Vegas. You get people from Atlanta, Tennessee, Seattle, Portland, California, all over. It's got a cool vibe.
The Strip is actually the shittiest part of Vegas. I mean, so I hardly go down there. Hardly, man. When I'm here, it's usually because I'm catching a show or something. Like someone wants to go to a show that's out here with me, and I'm like, all right, let's go to Cal or some shit like that. But I'm usually like, and I started becoming that guy for a while when I lived out here, where I was at like SD Steakhouse, The Wynn, places like that with my ex, because she was all about like image. You know what I mean? And so I was like down there, but I never really felt like I fit in. You know what I mean? And so like now it's like I'm at, if I do go eat, I'm eating like, the Arts District or something like that. It's shit like that. That's just more my vibe.
Well, here in the Sahara Commercial Center, tons of international food. You got Thai, you got I think it's Ethiopian, fantastic Mexican. Like,
nice.
I mean, because it was cheap rent for so long. I mean, this is considered the red light district. So
that's right.
Yeah, up until after COVID is when it started to build back up. But nobody could do anything during
It'd be
COVID.
Perfect for a kava spot here.
It'd be fantastic.
I could just tell, just driving in there. I was like, this fits the vibe of other kava spots and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man.
Joe, appreciate you coming on, man.
Nah, man,
thanks. We can keep doing this again and again because I love talking with you.
Yeah, dude, sure, man. Like, I'm gonna swing by. You guys here tomorrow?
Yeah.
And I'm going to come by tomorrow when I have a
yeah.
little bit more time.
Heck yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm
heck
sure
yeah.
my wife is like, I don't even know what time it is,
I don't
actually.
either. I was looking.
Oh, shit. I think this has been like a 2-hour.
Yeah, I think so.
Shit. Yeah, this has been like but it's cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We
Like
covered great shit. I'm stoked. It was nice to be able to expand the article that I wrote on you because we only got so many words there, but I was glad to get you in here and be able to chit chat. So.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this has been a pleasure. This is a cool ass studio. For those that, this will be viewed somewhere, or maybe it's live, or I don't know.
No,
but it's just cool, man. You've turned some dressing rooms into a studio, but it's cool.
Thanks,
This is really cool.
Everyone calls it the confessional.
Oh yeah,
it's,
I can see that.
A little tight, a little dark, and
I see that, man. I have a friend of mine. I don't know if he still has it. He took an actual church confessional booth and turned it into a sound studio.
Nice.
It's really cool.
Okay.
Like I was just like, damn. It's even got on the side. He closed it off, but it has like where you can see through, but you're not supposed to see through, like thing. And I was like, man, like how does the priest know who the fuck he's talking to?
Absolutely.
But yeah, man. But thanks for having me on, man. This has been great.
Hell yeah, Joe.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Awesome.
All
Thanks,
right.
man.
Thanks,
Appreciate
everyone. I'd like to thank Joel Reed for joining us on this episode of Avantpop Bookstore Presents. If you're in Las Vegas, Google WLVS Den Kava Lounge. Go get yourself a cocktail. That's WLVS Den, Den, Kava, Kava Lounge. That's here in Las Vegas. You can find Joe on Instagram at ReedBiz 2.0. That's ReedBiz 2.0. The theme music for Avantpop Bookstore Presents is performed by artist Dillashoe. And I hope you can join us again for another edition of Avantpop Bookstore Presents.